Chapter 324. Seeing that true monarch Ming Huang used the secret technique of fighting for his life, broke free from the suppression of the Xingqian Kendo map and rushed towards him, but Qin Daoxuan's face did not show any fear. Because of the loss of the restrictions of the Xianhuang Jintian Tower, he could teleport again. Before the true monarch Ming Huang rushed to Qin Daoxian, he saw him teleport and disappeared again. Seeing this, true monarch Ming Huang endured the pain of being stripped of the inextinguishable meaning of his fleshly body and the pain of his nascent soul being burned, and turned his head and fled. Want to escape? Qin Daoxian raised his brows slightly, sneered, then stretched out his palm and squeezed it hard, and a space barrier suddenly lay in front of true monarch Ming Huang. Go away! True monarch Ming Huang roared and punched the space barrier, smashing it to pieces. But this punch also made the figure of true monarch Ming Huang slam, and Dun Guang was forced to stop. Suddenly, true monarch Ming Huang realized that he was in a desperate situation. Neither fight nor escape. He turned his head, his eyes stared at Qin Daoxian fiercely, but he still confessed and said, Daos friendly means, I will fall down, you just need to let me go, Zanangwen Xiancheng I am willing to give up, how? Who knows that Qin Daoxian shook his head and said indifferently, fellow Daoist fights when he wants to fight, and stops when he wants to stop. There is no such easy thing in this world. Hearing this, true monarch Ming Huang's complexion suddenly changed, and he returned to his vicious appearance, and said, fellow Daoist just has the upper hand, and if you continue to waste it, it's unclear who will die. Although I don't know what price you paid for using this pure yang immortal artifact, I don't believe you can keep going. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian didn't say a word, and continued to inject a mana into the Xingqian Kendo diagram, and the speed of the disintegration of true monarch Ming Huang's body suddenly accelerated. Damn! Damn! True monarch Ming Huang was in a hurry, stopped talking nonsense, turned his head and ran away. Qin Daoxian was far behind him, blocking his figure with space barriers from time to time. Originally, Qin Daoxian wanted to use the Liangyi sword formation to fight against true monarch Ming Huang, but he found that he had far underestimated the power of the star sword Dao map. With this pure yang immortal artifact in place, there is no need for a 2-year sword formation. Only the repressive power of the Xingqian Kendo map, the true monarch Ming Huang cannot resist. Although the star's Kendo map consumes a lot of mana, but at the speed at which true monarch Ming Huang's body collapses, he will definitely fall before Qin Daoxuan's mana is exhausted. This is also the reason why the other party begged for mercy just now. Gradually, the speed of the collapse of true monarch Ming Huang's spirit armor and fleshly body became faster and faster. After about half a cup of tea, the aura on the black spirit armor on true monarch Ming Huang suddenly dissipated, and immediately, this 5th order mid-grade spirit armor turned into a little light and completely collapsed and disappeared. Do not. Seeing the destruction of the protective body armor, true monarch Ming Huang showed a hint of despair in his eyes. After the spirit armor collapsed, the defense of true monarch Ming Huang suddenly dropped by a notch. Although true monarch Ming Huang has integrated the will of immortality into the depths of his body, he is much stronger than Ji Suhui, who was beheaded by Qin Daoxian. But this powerful fleshly body disintegrated and dissipated in only a few dozen breaths under the suppression of the star's Kendo map. The elder of the Qingwei Taoist faction. You can't kill me, the Xianqing Taoist League will never let you go. Fellow Daoist, spare my life. I will do whatever you want, I just ask you to spare my life. You bastard, I won't let you go even if I'm a ghost. Ah! Threatening, begging for mercy, and scolding, true monarch Ming Huang abandoned all the dignity in face of a true monarch nascent soul in just a few dozen breaths, just to survive. But Qin Daoxian remained unmoved, determined to kill him. An enemy of the late nascent soul, he did not dare to let go. Even if he himself is not afraid of the revenge of this late nascent soul true monarch, the Qin family behind him can't stand the care of a late nascent soul monk. Since offended, it will be completely eradicated. After killing true monarch Ming Huang and then recovering Jinan Pass, there will be no obstacles. Once Jinan Pass is captured, he will be free to go to the one-year appointment of the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace. Die. In the void, the body of true monarch Ming Huang was almost shrouded in a cloud of black mist. These black mists were all the inextinguishable true meanings that he integrated into the body after he broke through the nascent soul stage. Qin Daoxian didn't know if there were any secret calculations left by the other party in these indestructible true meanings. As all the true meaning of immortality was stripped away, the body of true monarch Ming Huang collapsed almost instantly. Whoosh! Where the body of true monarch Ming Huang collapsed, a purple streamer flashed away. Oh, at this level, fellow Taoist still wants to escape. Qin Daoxian sneered. The next moment, a 3-inch tall purple villain slammed into the space barrier under Qin Daoxian's cloth. The purple villain turned his head, his eyebrows, eyes and face were exactly the same as those of true monarch Ming Huang, who was the Yuaning of true monarch Ming Huang. I saw the nascent soul staring at Qin Daoxian viciously, and immediately knelt down on the spot, saying sadly, "Friend Taoist is merciful, this old man has spent more than 1,700 years in his cultivation to this day, and I hope that friend Taoist will take care of this old man's hard work. Come on, spare my life." Saying that, kowtow like pounding garlic. Immediately, true monarch Ming Huang seemed to think of something, raised his head and said, "If fellow Taoists don't dislike it, I would like to make an oath of the great Tao and respect fellow Taoists as the master. Oh yes, I can still lurk in the Qingwei Taoist sect, as a secret child, to inquire about the news of your master." Hearing that true monarch Ming Huang was willing to serve him as the master, Qin Daoxian didn't care too much, but when he heard that true monarch Ming Huang was willing to be the Dark Sun, to inquire about the news for him in the Qingwei Taoist sect, Qin Daoxian couldn't help but feel a little moved. As an old monster who has practiced for more than 1,700 years, true monarch Ming Huang has such vicious eyes that he could even see that Qin Daoxian was moved. Seeing this, he was ecstatic in his heart, but he didn't show it at all, but directly swore, "I, the true monarch Ming Huang, make an oath of the great Tao here, and I would like to serve this fellow in front of me as the master, and if I betray, let me." My true monarch Ming Huang was bombarded by lightning and died. Boom! A dull thunder sounded, and the oath of the avenue was actually fulfilled. Owner. After making the oath of the avenue, true monarch Ming Huang immediately lowered his eyebrows and called Qin Daoxian his master. Seeing that this true monarch Ming Huang was able to bend and stretch, Qin Daoxian's heart moved, but he said, "Since you are willing to serve me as my master, then I will ask you, what treasures are there in the Qingwei Taoist sect to restore the soul?" "The treasure that repairs the soul." True monarch Ming Huang was stunned for a moment, but he was horrified in his heart. Tai Shin Shui is one of the most secret things of the Qingwei Taoist sect. Only the monks above the middle nascent soul have heard of it in the entire sect. Even he, a late nascent soul cultivator, only knows that a drop of Tai divine water will be born in the sect in the near future, but he doesn't even know the specific date. How does this person know? True monarch Ming Huang couldn't help but think that there must be spies from the Qianyuan sword sect in the sect, and their status is extremely high. But right now, he can't protect himself, so he can't care about any sect spies. Thinking of this, true monarch Ming Huang revealed all the information he knew. Tai Shin Shui. Qin Daoxian muttered. Now, he finally knew what the one-year agreement was meant by the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace. It is actually the treasure born from the Tai Immortal Pond of the Qingwei Taoism School, Tai Shin Shui. This treasure can be used to purify the soul of Yuanying cultivators, and it will be of great help for Yuanying cultivators to break through to the Yuanshan stage. No wonder Palace Master Qin said that it depends on my good fortune. If you want to grab Tai Shin Shui from the nest of the Qingwei Taoist sect, I am afraid that even Palace Master Qin is not sure about it. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian's eyes flickered, and various calculations came to his mind. True monarch Ming Huang saw Qin Daoxian meditating, and flew to him pitifully, waiting for Qin Daoxian to fall. In the previous battle, true monarch Ming Huang not only used the 7-soul burning Dafa to burn the nascent soul, but then his body was destroyed, and the nascent soul was exposed outside the body. At this moment, he is already crumbling, and his consciousness is about to sink. But true monarch Ming Huang is still in high spirits, because he knows that only if he shows enough value now can he survive in the hands of this terrifying Jindan real person in front of him. True monarch Ming Huang never thought that one day, he would be planted in the hands of a Jindan real person. Indulge for a moment. Qin Daoxian turned his head to look at true monarch Ming Huang, and said, "If I let you go back to the sect to steal the Tai divine water, are you sure?" Hearing this, true monarch Ming Huang looked embarrassed. He cupped his hands and said bitterly, "Master, Tai Shin Shui is the treasure of my Qingwei Taoism. Even with my status in the sect on weekdays, it is very difficult. Get in touch with it, let alone now." Qin Daoxian looked at the appearance of Yuan Ying's spiritual light after the physical body of Ming Huang was destroyed, and nodded, "You are quite honest. Master's eyes are like torches, how dare you hide it? Pity." Qin Daoxian shook his head. "I don't know what the master regrets." Qin Daoxuan's eyes were indifferent, and then he reached out and grabbed it, holding the nascent soul of true monarch Ming Huang in his hand. Suddenly, the law of space broke out, directly strangling true monarch Ming Huang's nascent soul into pieces. Afterwards, nascent soul turned into a little bit of aura, dissipating between heaven and earth. Until his death, true monarch Ming Huang couldn't believe it, why he was so obedient when he was so obedient, that the real person in front of him would still kill him. Doesn't the other party know how much benefit a servant in the late nascent soul can bring him? Unfortunately, a servant who can bend and stretch, I really have no luck, so I can only let you die. Qin Daoxian looked at nascent soul dissipated in his hands and muttered. Although true monarch Ming Huang made the oath of the Great Way, this oath of the Great Way is not without solution. At least Qin Daoxian knew a way to break the oath of the Great Tao. As a Yuanying monk, true monarch Ming Huang had his body destroyed again. Even if Qin Daoxian spared his life, he would either take the body of others or take the path of reincarnation. Once the other party takes the path of reincarnation, the oath he made at this moment is just a piece of bullshit. Moreover, Qin Daoxian was sure that if the opponent was reincarnated as a soldier, he would definitely him off before he was resolved. Therefore, Qin Daoxian naturally had to smash the other side to ashes, and not give him any chance at all. There are countless examples of monks with higher cultivation levels capsized in the gutter, and there are countless examples in the world of immortal cultivation, not to mention that he, a Jindan cultivator, faced a late nascent soul cultivator about thousands of miles away. Fairy Qi Yao and the others watched Qin Daoxian and true monarch Ming Huang chase and flew out of their spiritual detection range, and did not dare to follow them to check. Because the power that Qin Daoxian just displayed when he used the star's kendo map was really terrifying. Seeing Qin Daoxian displaying the star sword Dao map, Fairy Qiao actually had the illusion of facing the little uncle. But how could this be possible? Although his little uncle was a mid-Yuaning cultivator before, he was a real monarch. The so-called top true monarchs are not randomly divided, but a strict division of strength made by the nascent soul cultivators based on their personal cultivation, Dao realm, secret methods and magical tools. Although this division of strength is not rigorous, it is enough to serve as an important reference for the fight between them. For example, what true monarch Ming Huang encountered today was not Qin Daoxian, but the hall master of Zhenhai Palace. I'm afraid he wouldn't even dare to fight in person, and he would run away without saying a word. This is the true monarch Yuanying's perception of each other's strength. Qin Daoxuan's own strength, although he can also be classified into the nascent soul level, but it is still difficult to compare with the Ming Huang Zhenjuan. This time, he was able to kill true monarch Ming Huang, all thanks to the pure yang immortal artifact Xingqian Kendo map. Although the power of the star's kendo map is far inferior to that of the pure yang immortal artifact, it is far more powerful than the 5th order magic tool or even the 6th order magic tool. Only in this way, Xingqian Kendotu can reverse the strength gap between him and true monarch Ming Huang in one fell swoop, and help him kill the opponent. Sect Master, what should we do now? Next to Fairy Qi Yao, the only middle-stage Jindan cultivator asked. Hearing this, Fairy Qi Yao shook her head. I don't know either, let's wait until fellow Daoist Qin comes back. You think he will win? Fairy Qi Yao was slightly startled when she heard this. Before she knew it, she thought that Qin Daoxian would win a late nascent soul true monarch. If this word spreads out, I am afraid that people will be regarded as crazy. Even if the real person of Xinjue was invincible in the Jindan stage, he would not dare to say that he could win a late nascent soul cultivator. Could it be that he, Qin Daoxian, is stronger than the real Xinjue of the year? That is a peerless fierce man who, by his own strength, has caused chaos in the Sea of Stars and several states. Unconsciously, Qin Daoxian has grown to this point. Fairy Qi Yao still remembers the scene when Qin Daoxian accompanied her to trap the real Xinjue who was hiding in the space of Xianfu. How many years have passed? Thinking of this, Fairy Qi Yao couldn't help but look in a trance. Young sect master. Seeing Fairy Qi Yao distracted, the middle-stage Jindan cultivator beside him couldn't help calling softly. Fine, Fairy Qi Yao, who came back to her senses, smiled, then looked in the direction where Qin Daoxian disappeared. I think he will win. The young sect master's eyes are like torches. Qin Daoxian. Hearing this familiar voice, Fairy Qi Yao turned around excitedly, only to see that the space in front of her was torn apart, and a figure came out from the torn space gap. Seeing the man in white in front of her, Fairy Qi Yao couldn't help but feel the urge to cry. Who knows, in the short period of time less than a stick of incense watching Qin Daoxian and true monarch Ming Huang fight, Fairy Qi Yao, who was calm on the surface, collapsed inside. You won. Qin Daoxian nodded and said with a smile, fortunately, I didn't humiliate my life. Chapter 325. Jinnan Army Barracks. Zhou Mubai, Qin Fusheng, and the others watched Qin Daoxian and the others flying towards them, their faces suddenly filled with ecstasy. It's back, it's back. Who is back? Qin Jinren. Qin Jinren is back. Inside the camp, happy voices rose and fell one after another. Qin Jinren won. Yes, we won. We have won, and there is hope to recover Zhenangguan, and there is hope to recover Zhenangguan. Ha ha ha, I knew that Qin Jinren would definitely win. In the temporary immortal mansion of the commander of the Jinnan army, all the cultivators gathered together. At this moment, the monks who can stand here are at least in the late period of Zifu. Of course, there are exceptions, such as Qin Fusheng, who is only cultivated in the middle of Zifu. However, although Qin Fusheng's cultivation is not high, his strength is not inferior to Zhou Mubai. Qin Daoxian turned his palm to suppress Ji Suhui, which not only made Qin Daoxian famous in Wanxinghai, but also Qin Fusheng, a junior Jianqiu of the Qin family, also became famous in Sangzhou. At this moment, all eyes were focused on the white figure in the main seat. Although Qi Yao was the head coach of the Jinnan army, with the power of this battle, Fairy Qi Yao refused to let Qin Daoxian sit under her no matter what, and insisted on letting Qin Daoxian sit on the main seat. The other Jindan real people, facing Fairy Qi Yao's humility, all showed the expressions they deserved. After all, the idea of respecting the strong in the immortal world is deeply rooted in the hearts of the people, and only the strongest can sit in a high position. The patriarch and the sect master, even if they are not the strongest in the clan and sect, are definitely among the best. Otherwise, as a leader of a force, his own strength is not strong, and he cannot suppress the situation at all. The reason why the Qianyuan sword sect could not be twisted into a single rope was also related to the fact that the sect master concubine Qin Shui did not have the strength to crush everything. If concubine Qin Shui was a primordial spirit Taoist, Yi Yin and other elders would not dare to waste a word in front of her. Now, Although the head coach of Jinan army is still Fairy Qi Yao, including Fairy Qi Yao herself, all eyes looking at Chen Daoxian at this moment reveal a sense of admiration. Everyone sit down. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, Chen Daoxian waved his hand and said with an easygoing expression. Thank you, real man. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, then cupped their hands, and then took their seats. Seeing the crowd seated, Chen Daoxian said with a smile, this time Zhenangwen is guarded by the true monarch of the nascent soul period secretly, and I didn't expect it, but luckily the crisis is lifted, and it is imperative to recover Zhenangwen. Hearing this, everyone's eyes were filled with eager eyes. True monarch Yuanying was defeated by Qin Jinren. How could the enemy army at this time be able to stop them from the South Army? Seeing that everyone was full of confidence, Chen Daoxian coughed and said, of course, although the enemy is gone, if we want to take Zhenangwen, we have to take a long-term plan. Hearing this, Fairy Qi Yao, who was sitting on the lower left of Chen Daoxian, nodded and said, what Dao Yuchen said is very true. Although Zhenangwen's Yuanying Jinjuan was removed, Zhenangwen itself still has a 6th-order defense formation. The cultivator at the peak of Jindan sits in the town, but it is not easy to break. Hearing this, all the Jindan cultivators in the Immortal Mansion nodded. What Fairy Qi Yao said was exactly what they were worried about. A 9th-level Jindan cultivator relies on the benefits of the spiritual veins to preside over the 6th-level defense formation, which is indeed not so easy to break. This level of defense formation, even if Yuanying Jinjuan came, would also have a deep headache. Seeing everyone frowning, Chen Daoxian continued, you don't have to worry, the 6th-order defense formation hosted by the 9th-layer Jindan cultivator can only block the attack of one nascent soul true monarch at most. Even if there are many Jindan cultivators in Zhenangwen to preside over the formation, we still have a war immortal boat that can be leveraged. In addition, my Jinan army sergeant can form an attack and I personally take action, it should be no problem to break this formation. When everyone heard that Chen Daoxian made his own move, they immediately remembered the existence in front of him who had defeated a true monarch nascent soul. Moreover, the Yuanying Jinjuan defeated by Chen Daoxian was still a late Yuanying cultivator, and if he joined the attacking Zhenangwen formation, breaking this formation was really just around the corner. Thinking of this, everyone's faces turned from cloudy to sunny. Aside, Fairy Qi Yao seemed to think of something, took out a jade bottle from the storage ring, and handed it to Chen Daoxian. Chen Daoxian took the jade bottle flying towards him, and looked at the other side suspiciously. Fairy Qi Yao saw the doubts in Chen Daoxian's eyes, and explained, this is the 10,000-year bell spirit milk, which is given to me by the master to restore the mana before leaving, and please don't dislike it. 1 yin bell spirit milk. Chen Daoxian's eyes lit up when he heard the name. Different from the Huiqi Dan and Huiyuan Dan used by low-level monks, the Wanyan Bell spiritual milk is a treasure that naturally restores mana. This treasure is divided into 3 grades according to the year, the 1,000-year stalactite, the 10,000-year stalwart, and the 100,000-year stalactite, which correspond to the monks of the Jindan period, the monks of the Yuanying period, and the monks of the Yuanshan period to quickly restore mana. You must know that in the process of fighting the law, the party with abundant mana can take a huge advantage in the deadlock battle situation, which shows the preciousness of this treasure. Chen Daoxian took the jade bottle, thanked him, and put it in his storage ring. He was not pretentious. At this time, for everyone, the recovery of Zhenangwen was the most important thing. And during the battle with true monarch Minghuang just now, his mana was depleted quite a bit. Not only did the mana in his own Dantian Qi deplete, but even the mana stored in the power spirit armor was not much. The star's kendo map is strong, but it cannot be used as a conventional method at all. This treasure consumes too much mana. If this true monarch Minghuang had a stronger physical body today, or had a 5th-order high-grade spirit armor to protect his body, Chen Daoxian might not necessarily be able to consume more energy than the other party. But the outcome of not being able to consume the opponent is that Chen Daoxian was defeated and fled. With the stars and kendo map, it was basically impossible for the opponent to kill Chen Daoxian. Not to mention true monarch Ming Huang, even a top true monarch, if he is not good at space law, it is extremely difficult to kill Chen Daoxian. Xingqian Kendo map suppressed, teleported to escape. Chen Daoxian basically fights if he wants to fight, and escapes if he wants to. Even if his current space law is not strong enough and the teleportation distance is limited, he still has the treasure of Michin banner in his hand, and he can escape 10 times at the farthest. Thousands of miles away. For a distance of 100,000 miles, even the divine consciousness of the top nascent soul true monarch could not cover such a distance. In other words, the current Chen Daoxian already has the confidence to save his life in the hands of the top true monarchs. You must know that he is only a first-level Jindan cultivation base. The next day. With Wanyan Bel Lingru as the backing, Chen Daoxian, whose mana had completely recovered, stood in front of the Zhenan Pass once again. This time, he did not lure the enemy out of the border. Nonsense, true monarch Ming Huang has fallen into his hands. At this moment, as long as immortal Yin Ji is not stupid, it is absolutely impossible for him to go out of the border stupidly and die. For the enemy at Zenangwan, the only way is to stick to Zenangwan and wait for reinforcements. It's just that the monks in Zenangwan didn't know that the reinforcements they were waiting for might never come. Attack! High in the sky, Fairy Qi Yao was wearing a spirit armor and a red cloak, and with her beautiful face, the whole person looked heroic. Following this order. On a huge white immortal boat, the lines of the formations suddenly lit up. Immediately afterwards, the spiritual energy gathered by the formation patterns became more and more intense, and at the front of the immortal boat, a thunderball slowly condensed. Chen Daoxian looked at the immortal boat and silently calculated the time for its condensed attack. 30 full breaths. The power of the thunderball accumulated to the apex, and it exploded suddenly. Boom! The ferocious thunder beam bombarded the sixth-order defense formation in Zenangwan, and the ripples of the formation light curtain were constantly bombarded. I don't know if the attack of this war immortal boat was too fierce, or if the defense formation of Zenangwan was not as strong as everyone imagined. Chen Daoxian only felt that the formation light curtain in front of him had become weaker. How is this possible? Chen Daoxian's face was full of disbelief. Although the attack of this war immortal boat is strong, according to his estimation, at most, it is only between the attack strength of the monks in the early nascent soul and the middle nascent soul, and it is impossible to weaken the sixth-order defense formation of Zenangwan with a single blow. Unless... Chen Daoxian thought of something, called out Qingying's sword directly, and slashed towards Zenangwan with one sword. Fairy Qiao also found out what was wrong with Zenangwan at this moment. Her beautiful eyes showed excitement, and shouted, "Continue to attack, don't stop. Others, follow me." The voice just fell. Fairy Qiao followed behind Chen Daoxian and attacked the defense formation at Zenangwan. More than 1 million cultivators from the Zhenan army attacked together, and the light curtain of the defense formation at Zenangwan only swayed and shattered like a bubble. Why is it so easy? It's too easy. How is this possible? I don't know. Chen Daoxian and other Jindan cultivators can't believe everything in front of them. This formation is too simple to crack, so simple that everyone can't believe it. You must know that this is a sixth-order defense formation. If the sixth-order defense formation is hosted by the true monarch Yuanying, it will be the attack of the top true monarch, and the opponent will not be afraid at all, which shows the horror of this formation. Qianyuan Sword Sex Protector Array, the Qiankuan Yinyang Locking Array, is essentially a giant array composed of sixth-order arrays. Although the defense of this formation is definitely stronger than that of the sixth-order formation in Zenangwan, it will never exceed the defensive limit of the sixth-order formation. This level of formation was actually broken by their Zhenan army in a single attack. It's hard to believe, but the truth is the truth. As the Zenangwan formation method was broken, the Zhenan army overwhelmingly killed the enemy in the Chengguan million-level monk battle. The entire battlefield can be described as dark. But the result was not a stalemate as Chen Daoxian expected, but a one-sided massacre. The reason is simple. On the Zhennan army side, there is Chen Daoxian, a strong man comparable to the late nascent soul, plus 7 Jindan real people, and on the Xianqing Dao League side, only 5 Jindan real people are stationed in the city. Chen Daoxian didn't need to slaughter the low-level cultivators of the enemy army, he only needed the consciousness to cover the audience and remove the more difficult bones. For example, the enemy's Jindan real person, the genius Zifu cultivator with amazing combat power, and so on. His divine sense can easily cover more than 2,300 miles, and the entire Zhenangwan Pass, including its 2 satellite cities, is shrouded in Chen Daoxuan's divine sense. Where there is resistance, Chen Daoxuan's flying sword will appear. The precise surgical strike shattered the enemy's heart of resistance in an instant. Once the psychological defense collapses, the next is a one-sided slaughter. The monks of the Xianqing Dao League scrambled for each other, for fear that they would fall behind their colleagues and be beheaded by the monks of the Zhennan army. This kind of situation of rushing to escape is 10%, even if the superior general shouts and kills the fleeing people, it cannot stop the collapse of the Xianqing Dao League. Not to mention that once Chen Daoxian found out about the generals in the enemy's army, he would greet him with flying swords and take the enemy's life. A slaughter-style battle went on for a whole day and night, and the shouting of killing gradually stopped. When the Zhennan army took over the defenses of Zhennan Xiancheng and cleared away the scattered resistance monks in the city gate, Chen Daoxian, together with the top brass of Zhennan army, had already stood in the largest immortal palace in Zhennan Xiancheng. This immortal palace was originally the practice place of true monarch Ming Huang. At this moment, it has become the temporary commanding camp of the Zhennan army. Inside Asgard, Chen Daoxian looked at the middle-stage Jindan cultivator with a rebellious face in front of him, and said in surprise, "You mean, Master Injia escaped yesterday while I was fighting true monarch Ming Huang?" Hearing this, the middle-stage Jindan cultivator looked even more angry, and shouted, "The Yin vulture is greedy for life and fear of death, the sect master will not let him go. And you guys, don't be too happy too soon." Kneeling on the ground, he glanced at everyone and said coldly, "The Dao League will definitely avenge this blood revenge for us." This middle-stage Jindan cultivator is none other than Chen Daoxian, who was the first to fight with him when Chen Daoxian called the battle yesterday. "What is your name?" Chen Daoxian looked at him. This Jindan cultivator was reluctant to say any more, but when he met Chen Daoxuan's eyes, he felt a sense of emptiness, and he muttered, "This is Yu Shuyuan, if you want to kill it, you must be slaughtered." It's a rather bookish name, and the person is quite tough. Chen Daoxian nodded, turned his head to look at Fairy Qi Yao and said, "Since this fellow Daoist requested so, then kill him?" "All right." Fairy Qi Yao nodded, and immediately slashed with a sword, completely obliterating the body of this real Yu. When he died, this real Yu had his eyes wide open in disbelief. After a few breaths, Fairy Qi Yao completely wiped out this real Yu Zenran's body in Jindan. Kill the last enemy real person in Zhennan Xiancheng, the 5 Jindan cultivators in this city, 4 die and 1 escape. The Zhennan army side won a great victory. Not only a Jindan real person was not damaged, but even the cultivator of the Zifu period was damaged very little. Fairy Qi Yao knew in her heart that Chen Daoxian was able to achieve such a brilliant victory this time. "Next, it's up to you." Chen Daoxian turned his head, just in time to touch Fairy Qi Yao looking up at his beautiful eyes. Fairy Qi Yao blushed, and immediately said sternly, "Don't worry, the rest is to count the captives and harvest, and report the good news to the sect, I can handle it." When it comes to reporting the good news to the sect, not only Fairy Qi Yao, but the rest of the fellow Jindan Real people are also smiling. In this battle to regain Zhenangwan, although they did not contribute much, their credit is also indispensable. Not only that. Compared with the reward of Qianyuan Jianzong after the recovery of Zhenangwan, the harvest in this city gate is the real big deal. It must be clear that Zhenangwan is a large immortal city with more than 1 million troops. How many logistics and shops should be served in this city for these sergeants? These are all shining spirit stones. Perhaps to the top true monarch who is bent on breaking through the Yuanshan stage, the spirit stone is nothing. But for them, the early and middle stage cultivators of Jindan, the wealth of a whole immortal city was enough to make them go crazy with excitement. 7017K. Chapter 326. In Asgard. Seeing that Zenangwan Xiancheng was taken down, everyone was excited. The only middle-level Jindan cultivator stood up, first glanced at Qin Daoxian, and then cupped his hands to Fairy Qiyao. Commander, this battle is a big victory, the next loot. Hearing this, Fairy Qiyao glanced at the crowd and said with a smile, according to the rules of the sect, 30% of the spoils will be handed over, and the rest will belong to the soldiers who participated in the war. Hearing this promise, everyone's expressions became even more excited. Qin Daoxian is not very interested in these spoils. The Qin family's Guanhai Xianqing earns a lot of spiritual stones every day. With the cooperation between Guanhai Xianqing and Yuanqin Xianqing, the daily profit earned by the Qin family is increasing day by day, and until now, even Qin Daoxian himself does not know how many spirit stones the Qin family can earn every day. Qin Daoxian was more interested in the storage ring from true monarch Minghuang than the loot seized in Zenangwan Xiancheng. The storage ring of a late nascent soul cultivator may be sold as spirit stones, which is not as great as the harvest of Zenangwan Xiancheng, but it must be some extremely precious treasures that are difficult to buy. Before, Qin Daoxian was thinking about breaking Jinan Pass, but he didn't have time to count it. Now that Jinan Pass has been taken down, he finally has time to check this storage ring. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian said to everyone in the court, the distribution of the spoils, you discuss the distribution, I have to retreat for a few days. Hearing that Qin Daoxian was going to retreat suddenly, Fairy Qiyao thought he was injured in the fight with true monarch Minghuang. Her pretty face tightened, and she stepped forward and said, are you all right? I'm fine. Qin Daoxian shook his head with a smile, then took out a storage ring. Like you, I also deal with spoils. Seeing the storage ring on Qin Daoxian's finger, everyone reacted. Although their hearts are very hot, everyone knows that this storage ring left by the true monarch is not something they can get their hands on. No wonder Qin Jin despised the seizure of Zenangwan Xiancheng. People thought so. Qin Daoxian randomly found a quiet room in Asgard. Then he found a set of Tier 3 formation flags from the storage bag, and simply arranged a set of Tier 3 protection formations. Then he sat cross-legged on the futon with peace of mind and checked the storage ring. This storage ring was left by true monarch Minghuang. Although true monarch Minghuang's soul was much stronger than Qin Daoxian's, the imprint of his soul on this storage ring was stronger than that of Jindan cultivator. However, with the fall of true monarch Minghuang, the imprint of the soul on the storage ring has disappeared. Qin Daoxian only used his divine sense to wash away the imprint of the soul on the storage ring. Seeing that the imprint of the soul was removed, Qin Daoxian looked happy and immediately opened the storage ring. Compared with the storage ring he carried, the storage ring worn by true monarch Minghuang has a 3-point larger internal space. Of course, the size of the storage space was not the focus of Qin Daoxian's attention. What he is most concerned about is the treasure in the storage ring. Among the storage rings of true monarch Minghuang, they can be roughly divided into 4 types. The first type is the sundries that true monarch Minghuang uses in his daily practice and life. These things, after being swept by Qin Daoxian's consciousness, put them aside. The second is the spirit stone. Even nascent soul cultivators still have a place to spend spirit stones, so it is not surprising that the nascent soul cultivators store spirit stones in their storage rings. It's just, this spiritual stone is too many, isn't it? Qin Daoxian frowned. This storage ring is almost filled with spirit stones, at least 90% of the space is filled with spirit stones. He only scanned it roughly with his divine sense, and found that the storage ring contained at least 1 billion spiritual stones. Although these spirit stones are a considerable amount of wealth for the Yuanying cultivators, is Qin Daoxian someone who lacks spirit stones? Seeing that true monarch Minghuang's storage ring is full of spirit stones, it is impossible for Qin Daoxian not to be disappointed. But soon, he adjusted his mood. Check out the third treasure, which is the magic weapon. This is Qin Daoxuan's most important treasure. The fifth-order instruments used by Yuanning Zhenjuan are very precious. Usually, even if the monks have enough spirit stones, they may not be able to buy them. In Wanxinghai, there are only two sources of fifth-order magic tools. The first one is made by fifth-order artifact refiners. As far as Qin Daoxian knew, there were only two fifth-order item refiners in the entire Wanxinghai. One is true monarch Yuanchen, and the other is the master of the refining hall of Qianyuan sword sect, Huyanqi. And neither of these two is the master who lacks spirit stones. It is conceivable how difficult it is to ask them to help refine the fifth-order magic weapon. The ordinary Yuanning Zhenjuan really doesn't have such a big face. Even though Qin Daoxian had some friendship with these two people, he was embarrassed to only pay for spirit stones and let them help refine the fifth-order magic weapon. In addition to the fifth-order artifact refiner refining the fifth-order magic weapon, Yuanning Zhenjuan wants to obtain the fifth-order magic tool. There is only one way to promote it with the power of good fortune. This method is much more reliable than asking a fifth-order item refiner to do it, and every nascent soul cultivator can do it. But a treasure like the power of creation requires a lot of time and energy of the nascent soul cultivator to extract it from the spiritual stone. This is the reason why many nascent soul cultivators have no more than two fifth-order instruments on their bodies. Qin Daoxuan's Qingying sword can be promoted to the fifth-rank middle grade. One is the purification of the power of creation, and the other is the improvement of his Dao realm, which has allowed the Qingying sword to be promoted. Found it. After doubling the search, Qin Daoxian finally found the Taoist magic tool used by true monarch Ming Huang in the storage ring of Nuoda, Xianhuang Zhentian Tower. Strictly speaking, this is an earth attribute magic weapon, which is not only inconsistent with the Dao law understood by true monarch Ming Huang, but also with the space law mastered by Qin Daoxian. The earth attribute is quite a match for Fuxing's thick earth sword intent. Qin Daoxian muttered a word and put away this treasure. Xianhuang Zhentian Tower is still too high for Qin Fusheng. I am afraid that this magic weapon will drain his mana before he can activate it. Besides, this tower is a Taoist magic weapon, and its function is to increase the power of the Taoist realm. Qin Fusheng has not stepped into the Taoist realm at this moment, and he will not be able to use this treasure in a short time. Putting away the Xianhuang Zhentian Tower, Qin Daoxian picked out 3 fourth-order high-grade instruments. It's just that the fourth-order magic weapon has not been paid much attention by Qin Daoxian, and he just checked it a little and put it into his storage ring at will. After reading the magic weapon, Qin Daoxian focused his attention on the last treasure, the medicinal pill. The elixir of true monarch Ming Huang is specially placed on a shelf in the storage ring. This shelf is very large. At first glance, it is full of jade bottles. It is simply estimated that there are at least hundreds of jade bottles on the shelf, and each jade bottle occupies a square of the shelf. Seeing these high-level medicinal herbs, Qin Daoxian became slightly interested. So far, the only treasure that Qin Daoxian found in the Minghuang Zhenjin storage ring was the only treasure of interest, which was the fifth-order high-grade Taoist magic weapon of Xianhuang Zhentian Pagoda. Don't look at the fact that when true monarch Ming Huang used Xianhuang Zhentian Pagoda, it didn't play a big role, but that was because Qin Daoxuan's kendo map of stars was too strong. If it weren't for this, Qin Daoxian would be like a bug stuck by a spider's web, with the tower's increase in the Dao domain, and it would be very reluctant to even cast escape light, let alone teleport. Right now, these high-level medicinal pills in the storage ring are the second thing Qin Daoxian is interested in. Like high-level instruments, it will become very difficult to buy medicine with spirit stones when it reaches the fourth or even fifth order. For example, the most famous Jijin Dan among the fourth-order medicinal pills. This kind of treasure that assists cultivators to form pills can't be bought with only spirit stones. Zhou Mingho, the head of the Zhou family in Sangzhou, used the gold knot elixir that the Zhou family bought from a true emperor of Yuanning from the Qianyuan sword sect. As for the fifth-order medicinal pills that are of great use to true monarch nascent soul, it is even more difficult to buy them with spirit stones. Unless it is the power of creation. Otherwise, ordinary true monarchs would not be willing to trade these precious treasures with spirit stones. Looking at the jade bottles on the shelf, Qin Daoxian eagerly checked them one by one. Chalcedony Dan, Zifu Dan, Zhuyan Dan. A piece of spiritual pill above the third rank was taken out from the forbidden jade bottle by Qin Daoxian as if he had opened a treasure chest. Jing Jin Dan. Qin Daoxian's face was overjoyed when he opened a fourth-order spirit pill to form a golden pill. The fourth-order spiritual elixir and the golden elixir, even for the Qin family, are quite precious treasures. After all, this thing can help the cultivator of Zifu to condense the golden elixir. Although the later golden elixir calamity still depends on the cultivator, this elixir can still increase the probability of the cultivator forming the elixir by 30%. For almost any Zifu cultivator, this thing is a treasure that determines the fate of the road. After all, in the world of immortality, there are very few cultivators like Qin Daoxian who have broken through to the golden elixir stage without using any medicinal pills. Open the treasure box and open a gold knot. Qin Daoxian was greatly encouraged, and he opened the treasure box even more excitedly. Soon, Qin Daoxian took out the high-level elixir. 80% of these elixir were third-order elixir, and the remaining 20% were fourth-order elixir. As for the fifth-order elixir, Qin Daoxian didn't find a single one. The fifth-order elixir is really precious. Qin Daoxian sighed while taking out the elixir from the jade bottle. Also, if there is a fifth-order elixir that is helpful to true monarch Ming Huang, he has already taken it, and it will be placed on the shelf of the storage ring. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian couldn't help feeling a little frustrated. Originally thinking about the storage ring of a late nascent soul cultivator, there were some treasures that surprised me, but I found out that the treasure of this true monarch Ming Huang, not to mention the treasure possessed by Qin Daoxian. Even compared with the treasure in the Qin family's library, it is far inferior. So poor, I'm so embarrassed to be called Jinjuan. Qin Daoxian complained. Although he complained in his heart, Qin Daoxian's unboxing action was not slow at all. Third-order elixir, third-order elixir, third-order elixir. As the third-order elixir was taken out, Qin Daoxian's excited and anticipating expression became Gujing Wubua again. Until pregnant baby Dan. A purple elixir the size of a glazed bead with a tire-like pattern appeared in front of Qin Daoxian. It was the treasure that helped the Jin Dan cultivator break through to the nascent soul stage, the pregnancy and infant pill. As soon as the pregnant and infant Dan came out of the jade bottle, he ran rampant and wanted to break through the air. But this quiet room, not only was he set up a third-order protective formation, but also shrouded in a space cage. The pregnant baby Dan hit the space barrier and was instantly bounced back. Qin Daoxian quickly raised his hand and put the restless pregnant and infant pill into his palm. The smile on his face could no longer be restrained. The pregnant baby pill, even for him, is of great use. Although with his current Dao realm, breaking through to the nascent soul stage in the future is almost a sure thing, but increasing the probability of breaking through the nascent soul stage is a good thing. He happily put the pregnant and infant pill into the storage ring, and Qin Daoxian's enthusiasm for unboxing suddenly became strong again. But then, there are no surprises waiting for him, all of them are third-order or fourth-order elixir. Phew! The last one. Qin Daoxian casually opened the ban on the jade bottle, only to find out that the jade bottle contained no spiritual elixir. This is the power of creation. Qin Daoxian's eyes widened, and after a closer look, it was indeed the power of creation. He once traveled to the true immortal origin realm and obtained 200 drops of the power of good fortune. The Yingying sword in his hand was promoted to the 5th rank middle grade with the power of good fortune. Only now, the 200 drops of the power of creation have already been squandered by him. Although Qin Daoxian's strength is strong, the strength of his soul is not enough for him to extract the illusory power of creation in the spirit stone. In fact, even if Qin Daoxian could extract it, at the rate of 1 drop a year, he couldn't wait at all. Too slow. Chen Daoxian looked at the power of creation in the jade bottle, counted it carefully, and found that there were 67 drops. 67 drops, isn't this what the true monarch Ming Huang was sitting in Zenangwan, and he had nothing to do to extract it? Chen Daoxian muttered. Immediately, he thought that true monarch Ming Huang's body protection spirit armor was only of the 5th rank middle grade, and he was more certain of this guess in his heart. Do you want to promote the spirit armor to the 5th rank top grade? Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian couldn't help but feel fortunate. Fortunately, the other party didn't have time to use these powers of fortune to advance to the spirit armor rank, otherwise the outcome of this battle between the two sides might have to be rewritten. After inventorying the storage ring of true monarch Ming Huang, for Chen Daoxian, a total of 3 treasures can enter his eyes. The first is the Xianhuang Jintian Pagoda, a 5th-order high-grade Taoist magic weapon. The second is the 5th-order high-grade spiritual pill, the pregnant and infant pill. The third item is 67 drops of the power of creation. These 3 treasures, let's not talk about the pregnancy and baby pill for the time being, he will not be able to use these things for the time being. Xianhuang Jintian Tower and the power of 67 drops of good fortune can quickly improve his strength. 67 drops of the power of creation, needless to say, whether it is to improve Cu sword intent or to improve the law of space, it can enhance his strength in a short time. As for the Xianhuang Town Tianta, it can also increase Chen Daoxian's strength. It seems that the Xianhuang Town Tianta seems to be in conflict with the Xingqian Kendo map. After all, the Xingqian Kendo map also has the effect of suppression, which overlaps somewhat with the function of the Xianhuang Town Tianta to increase the Taoism. But using the Stars Kendo map is too expensive for Chen Daoxian. In this battle with true monarch Ming Huang, it seems that Chen Daoxian won very quickly, killing a true monarch nascent soul in half a cup of tea. But at the same time, his mana consumption has bottomed out. In other words, if true monarch Ming Huang can hold on for half a cup of tea, Chen Daoxian will be the one who will lose. As for the Xianhuang Jintian Pagoda, it is a low-end version of the Stars Kendo map, which is far inferior to the Stars Kendo map in terms of repressive power, but at the same time it consumes much less mana. Compared with the two, this tower is more suitable for use in conventional fighting. Chapter 327. Jinnan Xiancheng. 3 days have passed since the city gate was taken down. In the past 3 days, Zenangwan has gone from noisy to deadly. The once bustling Xiancheng became extremely depressed due to the war between Qianyuan Jianzong and Xianqing Dao League. The shops on both sides of Xianqing Street were either smashed or the doors were closed, and there was no one at all. These shops were all opened by monks under the rule of the Xianqing Taoist Alliance. At this moment, the immortal city was destroyed. Although the fate of these monks would not be punishable by death, they would inevitably be taken away from their net worth. Some longer and beautiful female nuns will be kidnapped on the spot by the sergeant of the Jinnan army and used as a trophy. In this cruel world of immortality, the moral standard of monks is not as high as that of the civilized society of the previous life, and there is no saying that they must not slaughter civilians. Once one side is defeated, whether it is an army cultivator or an ordinary cultivator, the best outcome is to become a prisoner. More monks didn't even have the chance to become prisoners, and were directly killed on the spot. Just like the fate of those Zhangzhou cultivators when Zenangwan fell, most of them were slaughtered, and only a few became prisoners. This little scene was nothing in the more than 400 years of the Izumo War. Asgard quiet interior. Chen Daoxian sat cross-legged on the futon, and everything that happened in Jinnan Xianqing seemed to have nothing to do with him. At this moment, he is paying full attention to the changes in the Dantian Qi Sea. To be precise, it is the change in the Kendo map of stars and stars in the Sea of Qi in Dantian. On the Stars Kendo map, 2 stars, one large and one small, are embellished, which are the 2 stars formed after the realization of Chen Daoxian's space law and the Cu sword intent. Only now, the stars transformed by the Cu sword intent are beating violently. This kind of beating is not because the CU sword intent is about to be promoted to the CU law, but an alternative transformation. If anyone who is proficient in the sword intent of the water movement sees this scene, they will find that Chen Daoxuan's sword intent of the rain is changing towards the sword intent of the water movement. Sword intent as a branch of water traveling sword intent. The potential of CU Jiani is limited, and it can only be promoted to the 6th level world realm at most. If you want to continue to be promoted, you must convert the CU sword intent to the water Xing sword intent. But it is not a simple matter to transform from the branch sword intent to the complete water movement sword intent. Chen Daoxian belonged to a crooked road in the past, and now he wants to forcibly reverse it. The price he pays must be much more difficult than someone who has never set foot on the road of Kendo. But fortunately, to understand the sword intent, the most important thing is comprehension. And what Chen Daoxian lacked the most was comprehension. In the sea of knowledge, the comprehension stars like giant celestial bodies slowly rotate, and as the comprehension stars rotate, traces of dust-like matter detach and disappear from the comprehension stars little by little. With the consumption of comprehension stars, Chen Daoxuan's comprehension also skyrocketed. Chen Daoxian found that since the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic broke through to the 3rd layer, not only has a function of Dao extension, but also the function of enlightenment has changed again. On the 2nd level of the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, there is an additional preaching function, and the enlightenment function has changed from 10 times the original understanding to 30 times the understanding, a huge improvement. On the 3rd level of the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, Chen Daoxuan's enlightenment function is no longer limited to how many times his comprehension. He found that his comprehension can be adjusted and controlled at will. Theoretically, there is no upper limit to how many times you want to have comprehension. But as the comprehension multiplier increases, the consumption of comprehension stars will also increase sharply. Chen Daoxian has tried it, and once he uses more than 100 times his savvy, this savvy star with a diameter of hundreds of miles will be consumed at a terrifying speed. To consume 100 times of comprehension, he estimated that in 3 days at most, this comprehension star formed by absorbing a large amount of chaotic energy from the true immortal origin realm will be exhausted. And if the comprehension used is less than 100 times, the speed of consuming the comprehension stars will suddenly decrease, and there is no change at all. At the moment, Chen Daoxian doubled his comprehension, which just reached 101 times, because he found that when his comprehension exceeded 100 times, he seemed to have entered an indescribable special state. The barriers that were difficult to comprehend and understand in the past have become simple and easy to understand in an instant with the blessing of more than 100 times of comprehension. It's like his silk rain sword intent. As a branch of sword intent of water traveling, once a cultivator sets foot on sword intent of silk rain, and then wants to embark on sword intent of water traveling, the price to be paid will be too great. According to the records of the Qianyuan sword sect classics, if you want to switch from the branches of sword intent, such as Cu sword intent, extreme cold sword intent, etc., to the path of water traveling sword intent, you need to comprehend several branches of sword intent, and comprehend them into extremely high realm. Then, on the basis of these several branches of water-moving sword intentions, we can only comprehend the water-moving sword intention by integrating them into one. This method, just by the sound of it, makes the scalp feel numb. Chen Daoxian also planned to use this method to reverse his Cu sword intent, but after his comprehension exceeded 100 times, he found that he didn't need such trouble. He was able to peep through the silk rain sword intent of the Taoist realm, and peep a trace of the sword intent of the water in the same realm. For other cultivators, it was like a fantasy, but for Chen Daoxian, who was now 100 times more savvy, it was as easy as he could. On the stars Kendo map, with the violent beating of the stars transformed by the Cu sword intent, the originally light blue Cu sword intent stars finally transformed into a clear water blue. Water moves sword intent. It's done. In the quiet room, Chen Daoxian suddenly opened his eyes, his face full of surprise. In the sea of Dantian gas, the star Kendo map covers the top. On the star map, A bright space star like a diamond version stands in the center, and next to the space star is a water blue water star. These two stars are not only transformed by the law of space and the sword intent of the water movement, but also transformed by the shadow-bearing sword and the flying snow sword. Seeing that Shui Xing's sword intent was completed, Chen Daoxian was overjoyed and spit out. He saw a water blue star spit out by him. As soon as the water blue star appeared, it turned into a light blue flying sword and slowly revolved around Chen Daoxian. Looking at the Feishua sword that had been with him at the beginning of his cultivation path, Chen Daoxian couldn't help but gently stroked its blade. After Feishuajin was integrated into Chen Daoxian's thoughts, his spirituality soared again. Even if Chen Daoxian did not take the initiative to control it with his thoughts, it could make the most suitable response to Chen Daoxian's thoughts according to Chen Daoxian's thoughts. The so-called heart-to-heart, but that's it. After appeasing Feishuajin, Chen Daoxian took out a jade bottle from the storage ring, which was the jade bottle containing 67 drops of the power of creation. To promote the Siyu sword intent to the Siyu law was Chen Daoxian's idea at the very beginning. But before the implementation, Chen Daoxian wondered if he could transform the Siyu sword intent into the water-traveling sword intent with a broader path and greater potential. If it were another cultivator, it would be even more difficult to comprehend the sword intent of water traveling if one wanted to reverse the sword intent of Siyu into sword intent of water in a short period of time. But with more than 100 times the blessing of comprehension, Chen Daoxian turned the impossible into a possibility. Of course, in addition to the blessing of 100-fold understanding, Chen Daoxian also repeatedly observed the changes in the laws of the giant axe when he unleashed his axe. Because among the laws that the opponent comprehends, there is the law of water movement. After many observations, coupled with Chen Daoxian's peeping through the Siyu sword intent, a trace of the water-moving sword intent, and 2+ reflections, Chen Daoxian reversed the wrong road he had embarked on in one fell swoop. Right now, the sword intent of Water Xing has been completed, and Chen Daoxian can't wait any longer. He directly thinks about using the power of creation to forcibly promote the sword intent of Water Xing to the law of Water Xing, so that his own sword of Water Xing can also step into the law realm. The cultivator has to step into the realm of law to be considered a true monarch. Chuck! 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 The power of creation fell on the light blue flying snow sword drop by drop, and quickly merged into the sword body. With the integration of the power of creation, Chen Daoxian's thoughts into it can clearly perceive that the flying snow sword is rapidly transforming. This transformation is different from the previous transformation of the Siyu sword intent into the water-traveling sword intent, but a transition to a higher degree. Chen Daoxian's space sword intent has long stepped into the law realm, and he is familiar with this kind of transition. As time passed by little, the flying snow sword sometimes turns into a flying sword, and sometimes turns into a water blue star. The only thing that remains unchanged is its aura, which is getting stronger little by little. The volume after turning into a water blue star is also getting bigger a little bit. Boom! A roar exploded in Chen Daoxian's sea of consciousness and air at the same time. He knew that this was the sound of the soul shaking. When the space sword intent stepped into the law realm, there was also this change. Sure enough, after this roar, the water blue stars in front of Chen Daoxian were dozens of times larger than at the beginning. Overjoyed, Chen Daoxian called out the star sword Dao map and took back his water sword intent again. At this moment, on the stars and stars kendo map, the water planets are about 1/3 the size of the stars in space, and compared to the previously insignificant scene, they are like the difference between clouds and mud. See. Chen Daoxian simply called out the law of space and the law of water movement one after another. As diamond-like space stars and water blue water planets appeared in front of him, with a thought, the two stars turned into two flying swords. It is Chen Daoxian's birth sword, Chengying sword and Feishua sword. With the fusion of these two flying swords with the law of space and the law of water movement, the sword bodies of the Chengying sword and the flying snow sword also began to undergo different changes. In the past, the body of the Feishua sword was silver-white, while the Qingying sword was silver-gray. But now, the flying snow sword has turned into light blue, and the Qingying sword has turned into a transparent color like a diamond. Chen Daoxian knew that after the immortal sword was integrated into the law gradually changed the physical properties of the flying sword. The domineering of the star's kendo map lies in this: the relationship between the law and the immortal sword is mutual influence and mutual promotion. Since the two have merged into one, it has become this relationship. Even Chen Daoxian noticed that after the water movement sword intent was transformed into the water movement law, the star sword map began to strengthen again. The magnitude of this enhancement is not as strong as the transformation of the space sword intent into the space law, but it has at least increased by about a quarter. Sure enough, the more and stronger the laws of Xingqian Kendo diagram, the stronger it will continue to become. Diagram raising swords, sword raising diagrams, that's what it means. Chen Daoxian said silently. The next moment, he displayed the two-yield sword formation, and wanted to use the power of the formation to once again integrate the laws of space and water movement. Before, Chen Daoxian tried to fuse them with the sword array of two instruments after his mind was integrated into the Cu sword intent and the law of space. However, the gap between the Cu sword intent and the space law is too great. Even if there is a mind and two sword formations, and the two can be forcibly integrated into one, the increase that can be brought is extremely limited. Although Chen Daoxian didn't know how strong the high-level realm of the space law after comprehending the space strangulation, the two sword formations combined the space law and the silk rain sword intent, at most, only increased the power of the middle space law by 30%. This increase does have a reputation for the fusion of negative laws and the soaring power. Among them, there is a reason why the degree of integration is not deep enough, but Chen Daoxian feels that the bigger factor is that the gap between silk rain sword intent and space law is too large. The two, one as bright as the scorching sun, and the other as small as a star, are not at the same level at all. Forcibly integrating them can increase their power by 30%, which is already a burning incense. This is also the reason why Chen Daoxian did not use the Liangyi sword formation immediately when he faced the enemy Minghuang Zhenjuan. The middle section of the law of space has increased its power by 30%, and it is still too far to compete with the monks in the late stage of nascent soul and the high section of the law of fire. Not to mention that true monarch Minghuang is physically strong, at least 2 realms higher than Chen Daoxuan's body refinement. Under various considerations, Chen Daoxian directly broke out his strongest trump card Xingqian Kendo map. It was this determination that saved his life. Otherwise, if he really uses the space law in the middle section of the law realm, plus the two sword formations formed by the combination of the silk rain sword intent in the high section of the Dao realm, he will fight against true monarch Minghuang recklessly. I am afraid that Chen Daoxian will be smashed into powder by the iron fist of Minghuang Zhenjuan. Because the realm of Chen Daoxuan's avenue is not much worse than that of true monarch Minghuang, but the basic cultivation base of the two sides is too different, and being beaten to death with one punch is already a more euphemism. Quiet indoors. The law of space and the law of water movement, under the link of the two swords, gradually merge into one. The water-blue fairy sword and the transparent fairy sword are constantly rotating and fused, and the law of space and the law of water movement are madly entangled together. Chen Daoxian felt that, compared to the giant axe he saw in the true immortal origin realm, although his behavior of the fusion law was tricky, the effect was not bad. The only difference is that his formation power is not strong enough, and the number of laws and realm is not enough. The power of the formation is not strong, but his formation realm is limited, and the number and realm of the laws are not enough, which means that he has limited access to enlightenment. But these are things that can be improved in the future, and Chen Daoxian is not in a hurry. Is this the result of the fusion of the law of space and the law of water movement by the two sword formations? Looking at the two swords in front of them that were completely integrated into one, exuding a terrifying power, Chen Daoxuan's heart trembled. In front of him, this peculiar immortal sword was quietly suspended. On the immortal sword, Two laws were entangled, fused, separated, and entangled, showing an extremely unstable state. Around the fairy sword, the space was like a rag, torn into pitch-black holes. You must know that the space in the quiet room at the moment is reinforced and suppressed by the star kendo map, and it is not comparable to the space that is not reinforced outside. Even so, the space was easily twisted to pieces. Seeing this scene, Chen Daoxian did not dare to continue trying, and quickly removed the bond of the power of the formation. With the withdrawal of the two swords, the law of space and the law of water movement are like two mutually exclusive magnets, directly separated. Ha! If this sword goes down, the original true monarch Ming Huang can't bear it, right? Chen Daoxian stroked the two blue and transparent fairy swords and muttered. 7017K. Chapter 328, Squeak, push open the door of the quiet room and withdraw the protective formation. The dazzling sunlight shone on Chen Daoxian's handsome face, causing him to narrow his eyes slightly. With his consciousness swept away, Chen Daoxian discerned the direction, his figure blurred for a while, and instantly disappeared in place. Inside a hall. Wan Xinghai cultivator gathered together with a serious look. In the main hall, not only the 7 Jindan real people with the highest cultivation level are present, but also the actual power generals in the various armies are also present. Suddenly, Chen Daoxian's figure appeared in the hall, causing a whole exclamation. Qin Jinren. Qin Jinren is here. As soon as Chen Daoxian appeared, the greetings came one after another, showing how high his status was in the minds of the Zhennan army cultivators. Fairy Qi Yao, who was sitting on the main seat, saw Chen Daoxian and immediately stood up. Her pretty face was full of surprise. Fellow Daoist Chen, you're out of the border. Chen Daoxian bowed his hands to everyone with a smile, and finally fixed his eyes on Fairy Qi Yao, and said with a smile, I just came out of the customs, and I met you guys discussing matters. What happened in the past few days? Hearing this, Fairy Qi Yao's smile on her pretty face subsided, she nodded solemnly and said, something really happened. Oh. Chen Daoxian raised his brows slightly. It is thousands of miles away from Zhenangguan. Qingwei Taoist sect. It is different from Qianyuan Jianzong sect standing on the island, surrounded by large and small defensive formations built by cave worlds. The sects of the Qingwei Taoist sect stand among the continuous mountains. Overlooking from a high altitude, the sect of the Qingwei Taoist sect is surrounded by 9 immortal veins. After hundreds of thousands of years of blessings from the ancestors of the past dynasties, countless immortal veins have been arranged by the monks of the Qingwei Taoist sect. Defense formation. In terms of defensive power, the defensive formation of the Qingwei Taoist faction is only above the Qianyuan Sword sect's Guardian formation. Qingwei Taoism, on a vast immortal pond like the sea, one after another silhouette sitting in the misty water vapor. If you look closely, you will find that the power emanating from these figures has all reached the nascent soul stage. Boom! A monstrous wave surged out from the depths of the fairy pond. A man wearing a silver-white Taoist robe with a somewhat feminine face suddenly opened his eyes. As the feminine man opened his eyes, the rest of the crowd were alarmed, and one after another, Yuaning-level consciousness came over. Metropolitan. The feminine man raised his head, looked in the direction of Izumo, and frowned. Scarlet Jiaozhen is dead. What? Impossible. True monarch Qijiao is the top true monarch, who could kill him? Could it be that primordial spirit Dao Jun took action? All of a sudden, the people guarding Tai Immortal Pond opened their eyes one after another and couldn't sit still any longer. True monarch Scarlet Flood Dragon is one of the top true monarchs in the Qingwei Taoist faction, ranking very high in strength. Compared to Ming Huang and his likes, true monarch Scarlet Flood Dragon is much stronger. Now everyone suddenly heard that true monarch Scarlet Flood had fallen, no less than Qianyuan Jianzong had fallen to a powerhouse at the level of a palace master. How could the sect not be shaken? This is a big event that affects the foundation of the sect. Seeing everyone's questioning, the feminine man's face was even more ugly, and he said solemnly, "It was Linwu Zhenjuan and Qianyuan Jianzong Shadow Hall's hall master who took action personally." Linwu Zhenjuan personally led the army to attack the Scarlet Flood Dragon Immortal City. Mean. The shameless special of Qianyuan Jianzong. The two beasts, Linwu, and the palace master of the Shadow Palace. For a time, the many nascent soul true monarchs on the Tai Immortal Pond were filled with righteous indignation. Although most people were very angry when they heard the news, there were also calm people who frowned and thought, "Sect Master, Linwu Zhenjuan has been stationed in Linwu Xianqing for hundreds of years, and he has always confronted my Xianqing Dao League, and has never attacked in a big way. Will they suddenly attack so aggressively?" The gentle-tempered Qingwei Taoist sect master pondered for a moment, then nodded and said, "Elder Yun's consideration is reasonable. Although Qianyuan Jianzong and my Xianqing Taoist League have been fighting for hundreds of years, the Yuanying level war has never broken out for a few years. The field, let alone the top true monarch himself. The news of Tai Shinshui in our sect must have been leaked." This. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what to do. The meaning of the Qingwei Taoist sect master is very clear. There are ghosts in the sect, and they are among the people present. These words undoubtedly made everyone look at each other's eyes with a slight change. At this time, a late nascent soul cultivator stood up and cupped his hands. "Sect master, everyone, now is not the time to look for spies from the sect. The Scarlet Flood Immortal City is the biggest gate built by my Xianqing Dao Alliance in Izumo. Once the Crimson Flood Immortal City is destroyed, the Qianyuan Sword Sect's army can freely attack the small immortal cities stationed by my Qingwei Taoist faction." Elder, he is right. The most important thing right now is to block true monarch Linwu. Just as everyone was arguing, another message came over. Seeing this, everyone turned their attention to the sect master of Qingwei Taoism. The gentle-faced Qingwei Taoist sect master took out the communication jade talisman in front of everyone. But then, his complexion became ashen. "Metropolitan." Seeing the face of their sect master, everyone had a bad premonition in their hearts. Zenangguan was broken, and true monarch Minghuang died in battle. Within a day, the news of the death of the two true monarchs was sent back to the sect, causing the entire Qingwei Taoist sect to be enveloped in a slaughter. Next moment, the sect master of the Qingwei Taoist sect stood up directly and ordered, "Pass my decree, order, all the nascent soul true sovereigns in the sect gather here, and rush out to the great immortal cities of the Cloud Country." Hearing this order, almost all true monarch nascent soul bowed their hands solemnly, "Abide by the decree of the sect master." After a stick of incense, one after another escaping light, or driving a spirit boat, or alone, flew out of the Qingwei Taoist defense formation, and flew in the direction of Izumo. With the help of Yuanying Zhenjuan left. The Yuanying Zhenjuan who stayed above the Tai Immortal Pond suddenly decreased by 90%. Metropolitan. The elder Yun surnamed Yun glanced at the sect master of Qingwei Taoism, bowed slightly, and said hesitantly, "Could this be Qianyuan Jianzong's plan to move tigers away from mountains?" The sect master of the Qingwei Taoist sect nodded. "Elder Yun's concerns, this seat has also thought about it, but the immortal city of the Izumo country must not be lost." He turned to look at the elder Yun. "Although Tai Shinshui has the effect of helping Yuanying cultivators to break through the Yuanshan stage, it is not absolute. If my Qingwei Taoist sect puts all bets on this treasure. Once Izumo was lost, Qianyuan Jianzong invaded our homeland, and I failed to break through the Yuanshan stage. Have you ever thought about the situation of my Qingwei Taoist school?" This. Elder Yun frowned, and after a while, he nodded. "The sect master is thinking about it, but the old man is worried that Qianyuan Jianzong will send someone to raid my sect? Assault?" The sect master of the Qingwei Taoist sect suddenly showed a confident look on his face, and said with a smile, "I really hope that Qianyuan Jianzong will really dare to send someone to take the opportunity to attack us." Heard. Elder Yun glanced at the unfathomable sect master, and immediately stopped talking. In any case, even if the Qingwei Taoist faction sent nearly 100 Yuanying true monarchs, there are still more than 10 Yuanying true monarchs in the sect at this moment guarding the Tai Immortal Pond, including the suzerain himself. Coupled with the Qingwei Taoist sect's guardian formation, Qianyuan Jianzong wants to send people to attack. At least dozens of Yuanying Jinjuan must be sent to attack together, and there is a glimmer of hope to break through the Qingwei Taoist sect. And now, how could the Qianyuan sword sect still have dozens of Yuanying-level combat power? The Xianqing Dao League did not dare to say that they knew all the information about the true Emperor Yuanying of the Qianyuan sword sect, but they knew the approximate number. Don't look at the more than 100 Yuanying Jinjuan in Qianyuan Jianzong. But at the same time, the territory of Qianyuan sword sect is also very vast. Wan Xinghai has to leave a part of Yuanying Jinjuan to guard, and the real Demon World Channel also needs to leave Yuanying Jinjuan to guard. And at this moment, the Qianyuan sword sect attacked Izumo with all their strength, and most of their nascent soul's combat power was probably transferred to the front line of Izumo. In addition, the sect of Qianyuan Jianzong always has to leave a few Yuanying monks to guard. After all, how could Qianyuan Jianzong still draw dozens of Yuanying monks to attack the Qingwei Daoist faction? And sending a few nascent soul true monarchs here, even if they are top true monarchs, is no different from sending them to death, and the Qingwei Taoist faction is naturally not afraid. Not to mention that the sect master of the Qingwei Taoist sect is astonishingly powerful. With him sitting in the sect, he can protect the sect and Tai Shin Shui. Having said that, the sect master of the Qingwei Taoist sect still ordered, "Elder He. Subordinates are here. Let your people check carefully the movements of all the Yuanying monks in Qianyuan Jianzong in the near future." This, subordinates obey. The elder surnamed He bowed to his orders. Seeing that elder He was about to leave, the sect master of the Qingwei Taoist sect said again, "Also, remember to let your people bring some trouble to the base camp of Qianyuan sword sect." Elder He touched the eyes of the sect master in front of him, his heart trembled, and immediately nodded, "Yes, sect master." Zenengguan. Inside the hall. After Chen Daoxian listened to Fairy Qi Yao's narration, a storm surged in his heart. "You mean Qianyuan Jianzong attacked Izumo in an all-round way?" Fairy Qi Yao nodded. "Not only that, Lin Wu Jinjuan has already captured Qijiao Xiancheng." Hearing this news, Chen Daoxian was shocked. Scarlet Flood Immortal City, but the Immortal City where Scarlet Flood Immortal Lord sits, as the top true monarch of the Xianqing Dao League, the status of Scarlet Flood Dragon True Monarch is like the master of the seven halls of Qianyuan sword sect. A true monarch of this level has actually fallen. Although Chen Daoxian didn't know how Qianyuan Jianzong did it, it was clear that Qianyuan Jianzong was determined to attack Izumo with all his strength. As for the purpose of Qianyuan Jianzong doing this, everyone present was unclear, but Chen Daoxian had a vague guess. Probably, to create opportunities for the Lord of Zhenhai Palace. However, with the power of the Zhenhai Palace Hall Master alone, can he break through the Qingwei Taoist sect with a large number of nascent soul true monarchs in charge? No matter how you look at it, it's a bit like courting death. However, Chen Daoxian couldn't help but think that once the Tai Shin Shui was conceived, a Yuanchen Dao Jun was born in the Xianqing Dao League, and the Qianyuan sword sect was also a dead end. The difference between early death and late death, it is no wonder that Qianyuan Jianzong is desperate. Is Sect Master Concubine so confident in the strength of Palace Master Qin? Chen Daoxian said secretly. Immediately, his heart sank. No, Qianyuan Jianzong must not fall, at least not now. As a traveler, Chen Daoxian's loyalty to Qianyuan Jianzong is almost zero. But the Qin family took root in Wangxinghai after all. Once the war broke out in Wangxinghai, the Qin family would definitely not be able to survive alone. Thinking of his record in retaking Zenengguan this time, the Qingwei Taoist faction must have regarded him as a thorn in the flesh. Once Qianyuan Jianzong fell, the first unlucky one would be his Qin family. On this point, Chen Daoxian was very clear. He didn't expect him to kill a late nascent soul monk of the Qingwei Taoist sect, and the two sides could still shake hands and make peace. The only way at the moment is to help the Hall Master of Jinhai Palace to successfully raid the Qingwei Taoist sect. This is not only for Uncle 13, but also for the Chen family. Once Wan Xinghai falls, the fate of the Chen family will not be much better. Thinking of this, the relaxed mood after recovering Zhenengwen became heavy again. Not only Chen Daoxian, but everyone in the hall, all looked heavy. War always makes people feel heavy. But the war between Qianyuan Jianzong and Xianqing Dao League is no longer able to stop it. The two sides have been fighting for thousands of years, and they have already forged a feud. Unless the other side completely falls, this feud will never be eliminated. Everyone. Chen Daoxian spoke suddenly. When everyone saw the big man talking, they all turned their attention to him. Although Zhenengwen was taken down, but now that Wan Xinghai is attacking Izumo on all fronts, our Zhenan army naturally can't stick to this city. Hearing this, Fairy Qiyao on the side was anxious, and she immediately transmitted a voice, "Fellow Daoist Chen, Shizuan only asks us to stick to this city and not enter it rashly. Fairy and rest assured." Chen Daoxian replied with a sound transmission, and continued, "Therefore, I suggest that I go to the enemy-occupied area to inquire about the news." Young Patriarch can't do it. The rest did not speak, and Chen Fusheng immediately stood up to object. Chen Jinjin think twice. Yeah, by winning Zhenengwen, our strategic goal has been achieved, and there is no need for real people to rush in. Everyone was discouraged. Fairy Qiyao looked at Chen Daoxian with complicated eyes and was deeply moved. Qianyuan Jianzong's full-scale attack on Izumo is undoubtedly a bet on the luck of the sect. Once this battle is lost, Qianyuan Jianzong will not recover, but it will definitely go downhill. As the young sect master of Qianyuan Sword Sect, how could he not be moved to see an outsider like Chen Daoxian working so hard for Qianyuan Sword Sect? Not to mention Chen Daoxian, an outsider, he is a disciple of Qianyuan Jianzong's main sect, and there are several people who can achieve the level of Chen Daoxian when they are in a crisis of life and death. Thinking of this, Fairy Qiyao could hardly restrain her affection for Chen Daoxian in her heart. She hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Chen Daoxian, I'll go with you." This time, he directly addressed Chen Daoxuan's name instead of Chen Daoyu. Chen Daoxian did not notice this slight change, turned his head to look at Fairy Qiyao, and said with a smile, "I understand the kindness of the young sect master, but I will go to investigate alone, which is more flexible." Hearing this, Fairy Qiyao immediately heard Chen Daoxuan's implication. Also, Chen Daoxian is extremely powerful. Although he has only Jindan cultivation base, his strength is comparable to that of true monarch Yuaning. With her strength, even if she follows Chen Daoxian, it is just a burden. Thinking of this, Fairy Qiyao no longer insisted, nodded and said, "Then, you should be careful in everything." Chen Daoxian nodded, then glanced at everyone, and disappeared in the hall with a flash. The law of space reaches the middle of the law realm and understands space teleportation. As long as Chen Daoxian does not die and falls into the formation arranged in advance by the enemy, even if several top true monarchs join forces, it will be difficult to win him. Seeing that the situation was not good, Chen Daoxian teleported, and then waved Mi Chen's flag, and immediately fled more than 100,000 miles away. No matter which top true monarch saw it, he would have a headache. Chapter 329. Chen Daoxuan's figure appeared again. It is already in front of Jushua Xiancheng in the southeast of Zhenengwen. Jushua Xiancheng, also known as Jushua Pass, is an immortal pass 30,000 miles away from Jinan Pass. This immortal city was built by the Xianqing Dao League, and it is the front line of the Xianqing Dao League's defense of Wangxinghai. After crossing this immortal city, you have completely entered the area actually controlled by the Xianqing Taoist League. Today's Izumo Kingdom is divided into two by the defense line created by the Qianyuan Sword Sect and the Xianqing Taoist League. Half are under the control of Qianyuan Jianzong, and the other half are actually occupied by Xianqing League. But whether it is Xianyang sect or Qingwei Taoism, the country where their sect is located is not in Izumo, but somewhere else. Standing thousands of miles away from Jushue Pass, Chen Daoxuan's spiritual sense swept across the towering city walls of Xiancheng. Jushue Xiancheng was just like its name, a city wrapped in silver. This immortal city is located on an ice-attribute spiritual vein, which is shrouded in ice and snow all year round. Although he did not enter this immortal city, Chen Daoxian still felt the aura of several nascent soul monks in this immortal city thousands of miles away. It's just that compared to Zenangwen's true monarch Minghuang, the cultivation of these three nascent soul cultivators is not high, and the one with the highest cultivation is only in the middle nascent soul. Of course, Chen Daoxian would not judge a cultivator's strength based on his cultivation. After thinking about it, he did not enter Juxugwen rashly, but disappeared in place in an instant. Inside the snow pass, the middle nascent soul cultivator with the highest cultivation base suddenly opened his eyes, and his consciousness swept across the entire immortal city. Who is spying on Zhu Xuecheng? He raised his head and looked in the direction of Zenangwen. Is that you? Chen Daoxian. The news of Chen Daoxian beheading true monarch Ming Huang has spread in the Xianqing Dao League in just a few days. The news that an early Jindan cultivator beheaded the late nascent soul true monarch is too exciting. In just a few days, it has become well known in the circle of Yuanying monks of the Xianqing Dao League. True monarch Ming Huang is not a weak Yuanying cultivator, but a real late Yuanying cultivator. Although true monarch Ming Huang may not be as powerful as a top true monarch, his strength is definitely more than 90% of nascent soul monks. It is such an existence that still falls into the hands of Chen Daoxian. Now, there are rumors among the Yuanying monks of the Xianqing Dao League that this real Jin Dan named Chen Daoxian may have surpassed the so-called invincible real man. From ancient times to the present, I have never heard of such a fierce Jin Dan cultivator. Chen Daoxuan's figure reappeared, and he had already crossed the Jushue Pass thousands of miles away, and had completely entered the area of the Xianqing Dao League. When he arrived at the enemy's territory, Chen Daoxian no longer teleported in a grand manner, but used the breath-holding technique to restrain his own breath. I saw that his breath had decayed all the way from the early stage of Jindan. Late period of Zifu, middle period of Zifu, early period of Zifu. The aura he exposed to the outside world lasted until the middle stage of foundation building before it stopped. Cultivation in the middle stage of foundation building. This cultivation is very common in the world of immortals, and it will not be disturbed by some unsightly scorns. It's just right, Chen Daoxian secretly said. Immediately, he controlled his facial skeletal muscles and moved quickly. About 10 interest. Chen Daoxuan's face has changed into another look, and even his height has been raised by 3 points. Appearance, body shape, breath, all changed. Now, even if Chen Fuxing stood in front of him, he would not dare to recognize this person as his own young patriarch. Of course, although Chen Daoxian is proficient in the breath-holding technique, a cultivator with a stronger soul than him can still find flaws when he approaches. Therefore, Chen Daoxian had better stay away from true monarch Yuanying. However, Yuanying Zhenjuan is not a Chinese cabbage. Although there are hundreds of Yuanying Zhenjuan of Xianqing Dao League, but they are scattered in the country of Izumo and their sects, there are not so many Yuanying cultivators. In the major immortal cities of Izumo, and in the larger immortal cities, true monarch nascent soul is in charge. In an ordinary immortal city, at most there are only a few Jindan cultivators. Yuanying cultivator Chen Daoxian did not dare to say it, but Jindan cultivator, no matter how many he came, would only serve food in front of him. I have to say that Chen Daoxian, a cultivator with amazing strength, is shameless. Going to the hinterland of the Xianqing Dao League to destroy it will definitely involve the Xianqing Dao League's great energy. There are fewer Yuanying cultivators sent to encircle and suppress him, that is to say, if there are more people sent, Chen Daoxian will run again. Chen Daoxian felt a headache when he thought about it himself, let alone Xianqing Dao League. Now, the Xianqing Dao League still doesn't know that such a troublesome existence has been mixed into its own hinterland. When it comes to going to the enemy's hinterland alone to make a riot, Chen Daoxian is not inexperienced. When he single-handedly killed the real demon in the great Yuan demon kingdom of the real demon realm, he provoked the Yuanying monks to chase and kill him. It's just that at that time, his cultivation base and strength were too weak, and he only did it once, and he never dared to send his real body there again. Although the forces he faces now are much stronger than the great Yuan demon nation, his own strength is many times stronger than that at that time. Chen Daoxian has only two purposes for this trip. First, create chaos. Second, enhance strength. If you want to achieve these two goals, hunting down the single nascent soul true monarch is the best choice. Of course, the Yuanying cultivator is not a Chinese cabbage. Although Chen Daoxian's strength is strong, he does not know the strength and trump card of the Yuanying Zhenjuan he is facing. If you rashly attack an unfamiliar Yuanying Zhenjuan, it is very likely that the boat will capsize in the gutter. Therefore, he must investigate the information of this true monarch nascent soul as much as possible before he starts. On the one hand, it is to inquire about the strength of this true monarch nascent soul, and on the other hand, it is to investigate whether the pockets of this true monarch nascent soul are bulging. Don't look at the strength of Ming Huang Zhenjuan, but he is really not rich among the monks of the same level. The three most valuable things in the opponent's body are only a fifth-order high-grade magic weapon, 67 drops of the power of good fortune, and a pregnancy and baby pill. With this wealth, Chen Daoxian doubts whether he has been robbed before, which is completely inconsistent with the identity of the late Yuanying monk of Minghuang Zhenjuan. The next days, Chen Daoxian began to move in the direction of the Qingwei Dao school, using the light of escape little by little. Along the way, he met a lot of other monks, but most of them were qi refining monks. After all, in the world of immortals, qi refining monks were the most numerous. Those cultivators in the qi refining stage saw his escape, and they all avoided it, for fear of making the seniors unhappy. As for the base-building cultivators with the same cultivation, none of them took the initiative to approach Chen Daoxian. Seeing this, Chen Daoxian nodded in satisfaction. It seems that controlling the cultivation base in the middle stage of foundation building is a correct decision. Chen Daoxian secretly said. Along the way, Chen Daoxian inquired many times, and finally selected the first target person. The first target he chose was a mid-Yuanying monk named Jin Yuan Zhenjuan. The reason why Chen Daoxian chose him as his first target was that this true monarch Jin Yuan was not high in cultivation, only in the middle stage of nascent soul, and on the other hand, he was rich enough. Jin Yuan Zhenjuan is a logistics supervisor in charge of the frontline resources of the Xianqing Dao League. Jin Yuan Xiancheng. Although this immortal city is large, it is responsible for all the resource supply of the 4 immortal cities on the front line of the Xianqing Dao League. And Jin Yuan Zhenjuan, as the only ruler of Jin Yuan Xiancheng, can imagine how much he has secretly earned over the years. Jin Yuan Zhenjuan is a member of the Xianyang sect. Although the Xianqing Taoist alliance is like a family, it is still different from the Qingwei Taoist sect. After so many years, Jin Yuan Zhenjuan has been secretly in the resources of the Qingwei Taoist sect. Extract oil and water. The target has been found, and the next step is how to approach the target. As a cultivator in the Yuanying period, Jin Yuan Zhenjuan was not an easy task to get close to him, and this matter had to be planned. Chen Daoxian thought to himself. Jin Yuan Immortal City, as the immortal city where Yuanying Zhenjuan sits, governs an area of more than 100,000 miles. Within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles, countless family cultivators and loose cultivators all rely on Zhenjuan Jinyuan's breath. Coupled with the fact that Zhenjuan Jinyuan is in charge of the allocation of frontline resources, the number of people who ask him to do things is like a crucian carp crossing the river. The Shin family was an inconspicuous foundation-building family within the jurisdiction of Jinyuan Xiancheng. It is said that the Shin family is inconspicuous, but it is relatively high-level cultivator. In fact, the Shin family is very famous among the foundation-building family, because the Shin family is good at alchemy, and it is the most famous alchemy family in the vicinity. This day, less than 100 miles away from the Shin family's residence, two escaping lights galloped away one after the other. Ahead, a middle-stage Jindan real person was furious. As the man ran, he said eagerly, "I don't know each other at all, so why do you have to push each other so hard? Humph. Hand over the pregnant baby pill and I'll spare your life." The black-robed cultivator behind him had a loud voice, and he didn't mean to hide it at all. The golden core cultivator in front was simply furious. "I don't know what your friend is talking about." Still stubborn. Chen Daoxian raised his brows, the escape light suddenly accelerated, and a flash of sword light quickly drowned the Jin Danjinren in front of him. "Do not." The golden core cultivator had a look of despair in his eyes and left with hatred. Until he died, he didn't know why he was being targeted by this unfamiliar monk of the same rank, and he didn't even know the reason for the pregnant and infant pill that the other party kept talking about. After killing this Real Jin Dan, Chen Daoxian directly grabbed the other's body, and after some investigation, his face suddenly turned ashen. "Why not? Do you think that if you hide the pregnant and infant pill, this seat will not be able to find it?" Chen Daoxian used the spirit fire secret technique with a look of resentment and burned the corpse of the Jin Dan real person in front of him. Before leaving, he glanced coldly at a group of people dozens of miles away, then turned into a flash of light and disappeared in place. Dozens of miles away. The Shin clan leader brought a group of elders and juniors in the clan, and was almost frightened by Chen Daoxian's glance before he left. A long time. The head of the Shin family came back to his senses, and he immediately instructed everyone in the family, "Quick, go and have a look." Yes. High-level cultivators' fighting method does not rule out that there will be leftovers that will be discarded by the opponent at will. There are not many people who have the same idea as the Shin family leader. The distance of dozens of miles can be reached in the blink of an eye with the escape of a cultivator in the foundation building stage. There are many others who have the same idea as the Shin family and all of them are foundation establishment cultivators. That is to say, the battle between the two Jin Dan real people broke out too fast, otherwise there will be a Zifu cultivator who will come to pick up the leak. When the cultivators met, they didn't say hello to each other. They all used their spiritual senses to carefully search for the path that the two Jin Dan real people flew through when they were fighting. Shingibai's divine sense swept across an object, and immediately became as clever as drinking ice water in a hot summer day. Storage ring. Shingibai's heart thumped. As a descendant of the Shin family, he knew very well that the storage ring, a high-level storage magic weapon, could only be equipped by cultivators above the Zifu period. So, Shinguibai swallowed fiercely, and immediately put away the storage ring calmly. Shinguibai thought that no one saw this action, but in fact, this action of his had already fallen into the eyes of the Shin clan chief, Shin Maoqing. After some searching, everyone naturally found nothing. The cultivators looked at each other, those who knew each other handed each other's hands, and those who didn't know each other disappeared in a flash. Jin Dan cultivator fights, and one died. This matter will definitely cause a lot of waves in the vicinity of Jinyuan Xiancheng. The Shin clan chief, Shin Maoqing, also returned to the clan with a group of people. The Shin clan land is located above a second-order spiritual vein. As a long-established alchemy family, the Shin family has more than one spiritual vein, but the spiritual vein of the clan is of the best quality. Usually, the clan chief and the more qualified clan members in the family cultivate here. Returning to the clan, Shin Maoqing immediately started the defensive formation. "Patriarch, are you?" One of the family elders did not know why. The other elders also looked at Shin Maoqing in surprise, as if waiting for an explanation from the other party. Shin Maoqing did not reply, but looked at Shin Guibai in the crowd. Seeing Shen Maoqing looking at him, Shen Gubai's face suddenly turned pale. Clan, Patriarch. Shen Guibai lowered his head, not daring to look at Shen Maoqing. Take it out. Shen Maoqing stretched out his hand. Hearing this, Shen Gubai's heart was beating like a drum, and his breath was like an ox. After a long time, I was very reluctant to take out a storage ring from my arms. Storage ring. Guibai, where did you get this thing? Could it just be? Suddenly, some clan elders guessed the origin of this thing. And Shen Guibai lowered his head and said nothing. Shen Maoqing waved his sleeves, took the storage ring from Shen Gubai's hand, and sighed, do you know how much disaster it will bring to the family if you hide this thing? Clan. Patriarch, I was wrong. Shen Guibai lowered his head and said in despair. Get up. Shen Maoqing shook his head, then looked at the elders. Elders, although this thing has fallen into the hands of my Shen family, it is unpredictable. When everyone heard Shen Maoking's words, they all nodded seriously. They are not the treasures that Shen Guibai is so stunned, and the Jindan cultivators are fighting for their lives, how can they be involved? In particular, they faintly heard that the treasure that the other party was fighting for was a treasure like the pregnancy and infant pill, which made them feel hotter. At this time, a foundation-building elder stood up from the crowd and cupped his hands. Patriarch, the only solution for now is to dedicate this treasure to the Jin family. Good. What the fifth man said makes sense. This treasure is indeed out of our hands. Everyone agreed. Seeing this, Shen Maoqing nodded and said, that's all there is to it, since the fifth elder suggested it, then it's up to you to do it, and you must contact the Jin family as soon as possible. Remember, it's better, let me personally dedicate this treasure to the head of the Kim family. Hearing this, the fifth elder hesitated for a moment, but nodded and said, yes, Patriarch. Go. Shen Maoqing waved his hand. Everyone handed in their hands and left, and before leaving, they dragged the lost Shen Guibai to leave together. Seeing everyone walking away, Shen Maoqing immediately closed the cave formation. Walking into the depths of the cave, I saw a Shen family head who looked exactly like him, lying in a coma on the bed, surrounded by a small formation around the jade bed. From the outside, the jade bed was empty. In front of the jade bed, a black-robed cultivator is guarding here, the one who chased and killed Jindan cultivator before. The black-robe clone saw Chen Daoxian, turned into a black light, and got into Chen Daoxuan's Dantian Qi Si, and entered Chen Daoxuan's Dantian Qi Si with him, and there was a water-blue fairy sword. It is by virtue of this flying snow sword that the black-robe clone can be cultivated in the Zifu period and behead the Jindan real person in reverse. Otherwise, just relying on Chen Daoxuan's black robe avatar is not necessarily an opponent of Jindan cultivator. Chapter 330. Jinyuan Xiancheng. Shen family land. A ray of light swept across the sky and landed in the discussion hall in the Shen family grounds. Inside the hall, the elders of the Shen family and the patriarch Shen Maoqing were already waiting for him. Seeing the light fall, everyone including Shen Maoqing stood up and looked at the person who came. 5. How is it? Fifth brother, what did the Jin family say? Yes, fifth brother. In the main hall, everyone gathered around them and asked in a row. The fifth elder of the Shen family looked around at everyone, and finally his eyes fell on the patriarch Shen Maoqing, nodding and saying, I asked for a relationship and saw an elder of the Jin family in Zifu. The family can go to present treasures to the ancestors of the Jin family at that time. Great. 5. I knew you had a way. When everyone heard the words of the fifth elder, they immediately became overjoyed. Shen Maoqing also smiled and nodded. 5. You did a good job. Oh yes, this is the spiritual stone that the family handed me to do things, and there are still some left. Taking the storage bag handed over by the fifth elder, Shen Maoqing weighed it, then handed it back and said, The fifth, you have accomplished this important event for the family, and you can keep the remaining spirit stones. This. The fifth elder glanced at everyone and found that everyone was looking at him with a smile on their faces, and immediately handed over to everyone, and happily accepted the storage bag. He also knew in his heart that if the Shin family could really climb up to the Jin family, they would soar to the sky in the future. In comparison, the amount of spirit stone sent out was nothing at all. You must know that the person standing behind the Jin family is Jinjuan Jin Yuan, the nascent soul cultivator. Although Jin Yuan Jinjuan belongs to the Xianyang sect, and he cannot open up a family of immortals, but the Jin family was founded by the descendants of Jin Yuan Jinjuan. In the sphere of influence of Jin Yuan Xiancheng, which immortal family and loose cultivator dare not by the face of the Jin family. Even the family land of the Jin family is located in Jin Yuan Xiancheng, under the protection of Jin Yuan Jinjuan, which shows how much Jin Yuan Jinjuan attaches great importance to the Jin family. Once the Shin family relied on the Jin family, their status in the vicinity would at least rise several grades. Those big clans who looked down on the Shin family in the past may have to curry favor with the Shin family in the future. In addition to the improvement in status, what has a greater impact on the Shin family is interests. You must know that Jinjuan Jin Yuan is the person who is in charge of the supply of resources for several immortal cities on the front line of the Xianqing Dao League, and he has a high authority. As the chief officer of the logistics and military supplies, even if Jin Yuan Jinjuan leaked a little oil from his fingernails, it would be enough for the Shin family to support him. Moreover, with the protection of the Jin family, the Shin family does not have to worry about outsiders coveting them when they eat these oils. Compared with a one-time precious treasure like the pregnant baby pill, the benefits of being able to get it safely are the most practical for the Shin family. This point, the top of the Shin family is very clear. This is also the reason why Shin Maoqing proposed to give the pregnant and infant pill to the Jin family, but the clan elders did not object. A month later. Shin family land. Shin Maoqing coughed lightly when he saw that the Shin clansmen had finished arranging their appearance. When everyone heard the cough, they all turned their attention to Shin Maoqing. Seeing everyone's gazes towards him, Shin Maoqing said, "This trip to the Jin family land is a great opportunity for my Shin family. All elders must remember to restrain the family members of the family and not lose them in front of the Jin family." Courtesy. Yes, Patriarch. The crowd shook hands in unison. Seeing that everyone was full of energy, Shin Maoqing nodded and waved his hand. "Let's go." Next moment. One after another, the rays of light rose into the sky and flew in the direction of Jinyuan Xiancheng. The Shin family was only a few thousand miles away from the Jinyuan Immortal City, and with the speed of a foundation-building cultivator, they could arrive in less than half a day. Everyone in the Shin family set off at the starry night and arrived at Jinyuan Xiancheng before noon. As a supply base for the 4 immortal cities on the front line, although the Jinyuan Immortal City occupies a small area, its location is very important. More importantly, within a distance of less than 100,000 miles from Jinyuan Immortal City, there are 3 large immortal cities, and all of them have nascent soul true monarch in charge. With the speed of the Yuanying cultivators escaping light, it really won't take long to arrive at a distance of 100,000 miles. Therefore, Qin Daoxuan's assassination must be unexpected. It is best to kill with one blow, and not give Jin Yuan Jinjuan a chance to escape and ask for help. As for the strong attack, Qin Daoxian had not thought about it. But Jinyuan Xiancheng has a 6th-order defense formation. With Jinyuan Zhenjin's cultivation in the middle of Yuan Ying's middle stage, Qin Daoxuan's desire to break through the 6th-order defense formation hosted by the opponent is undoubtedly a dream. Once he can't attack for a long time, Jinyuan Jinjuan only needs to ask the Yuanying monks in other immortal cities for help, and Qin Daoxian will be made dumplings by the Yuanying monks of the Xianqing Dao League. At that time, he was the one who fled. More importantly, Qin Daoxian will also reveal his whereabouts. The ghost knows whether the Yuanying Jinjuan of the Xianqing Dao League has any secret method to mark people. Once Qin Daoxian was located by them, his situation in the Xianqing Dao League area would be a little dangerous. No matter how powerful Qin Daoxuan's teleportation was, he couldn't stand the enemy knowing his position anytime and anywhere, and sent a large group of strong men to hunt him down. He came to the realm of the Xianqing Dao alliance in order to destroy and attract the attention of the Qingwei Daoist faction, so as to create opportunities for the Zhenhai Palace Hall Master, not to come here to die. In front of the gate of Jinyuan Xiancheng, the Xin clan fell into hiding, and honestly lined up outside the city gate. At the gate of the city, the defense formation of Jinyuan Xiancheng has been opened, and the monks in the army are all wearing spirit armor, and they look like they are waiting. Patriarch, this Jinyuan city seems to be a lot more strict. An elder said in Shen Meiking's ear. Hearing this, Shen Maoqing nodded and said, "It is indeed quite strict, but there is nothing we can do about it. Wan Xinghai's thieves attacked our country of Izumo. Now that the frontline war is in full swing, we must be stricter here. Alas, this Wan Xinghai is a savage cultivator." The elder sighed and stopped talking. After waiting for about half an hour, finally everyone in the Shen family arrived. "Who are you? What are you doing in the city?" At the city gate, a foundation building cultivator in spirit armor looked up and down Shen Maoqing and asked. Shen Maoqing, the patriarch of the Shen clan in Liangshan, Xiaoyuan, is here to attend the birthday banquet of the ancestors of the Jin family. Shen Maoqing said, took out an invitation and handed it over. It was the invitation of the Jin family's ancestors' birthday banquet. Seeing this invitation, the base building cultivator who stepped forward to interrogate him relaxed a bit. Returning the invitation, the base building cultivator in spirit armor waved his hand and said, "Go in, remember not to cause trouble in the city." "Thank you." Shen Maoqing cupped his hands, and immediately led the Shen family into Jinyuan Xiancheng. Enter Jinyuan Xiancheng. Everyone in the Shen family didn't care about wandering around, and rode on the cloud-treading beast car, galloping all the way towards the Jin family. Jinyuan Xiancheng, as in Xiancheng with nascent soul true monarch in charge, naturally also has an air-forbidding formation. People who are at the foundation stage of the Shen family's highest cultivation base will definitely not be able to fly in the sky. Although it can't control the sky, the speed of the beast car is not slow. It only took 1 hour for everyone to arrive at the Jin family land. At this time, it was already noon. In the Jin family land, guests have come one after another to celebrate the birthday of the ancestor of the Jin family. The ancestor of the Jin family, as a 9th-level cultivator of Jindan, although his cultivation is superb, he is a man of great joy and likes to pay attention to ostentation. In order to do what they like, the birthday banquet held by the Jin family for the ancestor will take a full month. Before entering the Jin family land, Qin Daoxian even heard monks complaining on the road. This ancestor of the Jin family is really too much. There is no reason to hold a birthday banquet every year. He is very happy to hold a birthday banquet every year. We, these small families, can't afford gifts. Oh, say a few words less. Suddenly, the cloud-treading beast car shook slightly. Qin Daoxian lifted the curtain of the animal car, and a continuous group of palaces appeared in front of Qin Daoxian. "Patriarch, here we are." Shen Maoqing nodded, looked at the extravagant palace complex in front of him with his hands behind his back, and waved, "Notify the clan, get off." "Yes, Patriarch." The next step is to give gifts, sing and congratulate each family. After a set of procedures, all the talents entered the palace group where the Jin family received guests. It has to be said that the Jin family, as the largest family within dozens of miles of Jinyuan Xiancheng, is much bigger than their Qin family in terms of ostentation. At least Qin Daoxian had never seen any cultivator in the clan who held a birthday banquet with such fanfare, let alone held it every year. Shaking his head, Qin Daoxian followed behind the army and entered the banquet hall. The Jin family arranged the guests of different cultivation in different palaces according to the cultivation level of the monks. What Qin Daoxian showed was the foundation building stage, naturally in the palace where the foundation building monks were. Only, before entering the foundation building period palace, Qin Daoxian released his black robe clone while everyone was not paying attention. Compared with Qin Daoxuan's deity, the black-robed avatar has reached the Purple Palace period, and it shows an uneasy look on his face. The cultivator received by the Jin family hesitated for a moment when he saw this senior from the Z mansion, but he hurried forward to greet him. Senior, this is the palace where the monks from the Foundation establishment eat, and the palace where you eat is here. Saying that, the cultivator of the Jin family made a gesture of invitation. The black robe clone still had a cold face and nodded. Seeing this, the Jin family cultivator who came to receive the reception was slightly relieved. Even though he had his back to the Jin family, he was still instinctively nervous when dealing with these high-level monks. Putting down the black robe clone, Qin Daoxian breathed a sigh of relief, and the expression on his face immediately became relaxed. Seeing that the patriarch was in a good mood, the fifth elder on the side smiled and said, "The patriarch will come later when I go." Hearing this, Qin Daoxian nodded and smiled, "Go." After about a stick of incense, the fifth elder led a Zifu monk from the Jin family over. Seeing the fifth elder of the Shen family crouching down in front of this cultivator of the Jin family's purple house, Qin Daoxian smiled even happier. "Are you the head of the Shen family?" Qin Daoxian cupped his hands and said calmly, "Senior, it is the junior." Seeing that Qin Daoxian still showed a neither humble nor arrogant appearance when he saw him, the cultivator of the purple house nodded. "I heard that your Shen family has a big gift for my Jin family, and you must meet my Jin family ancestor in person, but is there something about it?" "That's true." Qin Daoxian nodded. Hearing this, the Jin family's Zifu cultivator threatened, "If the so-called treasure you took out contaminates the ancestor's eyes, is your Shen family ready to accept the anger of my ancestor?" "Senior, rest assured, since the junior insists on personally dedicating this treasure to old ancestor Jin, he is naturally confident." Seeing Qin Daoxian so confident, the Zifu cultivator nodded and said no more. Of course, the reason why he agreed to introduce the head of the Shen family to meet with old ancestor Jin was because he heard that a real person Jin Dan had fallen near the Shen family ground not long ago. This incident caused quite a stir in the vicinity of Jinyuan Xiancheng. After all, Jin Dan Daoist is the strongest existence within hundreds of thousands of miles apart from Jinyuan Jinjuan. The fall of a Jin Dan Daoist will definitely cause a lot of shocks. Moreover, the ancestor of the Jin family even went to the Shen family's neighborhood to investigate after the incident. Based on multiple rumors, the Jin family learned that the two Jin Dan real people at that time seemed to have a conflict over a pregnant and infant pill. In this way, it makes sense for the two Jin Dan cultivators to fight to the death. Not long after that, the Shen family suddenly sent someone to present a gift to the Jin family. The Zifu cultivator, who was in charge of receiving the fifth elder of the Shen family at that time, immediately thought of the pregnant and infant pill. Knowing that this matter is of great importance, the Zifu cultivator did not dare to neglect, and immediately reported the matter to the ancestor. The old ancestor thought about it again and again and decided to let the Shen family secretly present this treasure when he attended his birthday banquet a month later. The reason why he was so sneaky was that the ancestor of the Jin family was thinking about the strong cultivator who killed the Jin Dan cultivator. Such a ruthless man, if he knew that his pregnant and infant pill was cut off by the ancestor of the Jin family, God would know what crazy actions the other party could make. The ancestor of the Jin family has been in the world of immortality for so long, and of course he doesn't think that he is arrogant because he is backed by the grandfather Jin Yuanzheng. Outsiders have rumored that the ancestor of the Jin family is very happy. In fact, the ancestor of the Jin family is not only extremely talented, but also very cautious. This is because he knew that the Shen family had the pregnant and infant pill in his hand, but he couldn't help but get it back immediately, so he knew a thing or two. Qin Daoxian followed behind the Zifu cultivator, walking around for more than an hour, before finally meeting the rumored ancestor of the Jin family in a palace. The ancestor of the Jin family looked very young, as if he was different from Chen Daoxian, and his cultivation level had reached the 9th level of Jindan, which was much higher than Chen Daoxuan's cultivation in the early stage of Jindan. Junior Shen Maoqing, see Old Ancestor Jin. Seeing the ancestor of the Jin family, Chen Daoxian hurriedly bowed. The ancestor of the Jin family nodded, and immediately waved at the Zifu cultivator beside Chen Daoxian. You go out first. Yes, old man. Watching the family's Zifu cultivator leave, the ancestor of the Jin family looked at Chen Daoxian and sighed, the courage of fellow Taoists is really admired by me. He paused, that's right, it's not surprising that you dare to do this with your fellow Taoist strength. I'm right, Chen Daoxian. Fellow Taoist Chen. Hear this. Chen Daoxian was shocked in his heart, but his face showed a look of daze, and murmured, I don't know what the senior said. Chapter 331. When the ancestor of the Jin family heard Chen Daoxuan's question, he didn't mean to explain. There was just a smile on the corner of his mouth, and he looked at Chen Daoxian calmly. An atmosphere of silence was brewing in the hall. The nervous expression on Chen Daoxuan's face gradually subsided. He looked at the ancestor of the Jin family coldly and said, How do you see that I am not the head of the Shen family? Hearing this doubt, the ancestor of the Jin family suddenly laughed even more. Originally, I wasn't sure. The Jindan cultivator battle broke out near the Shen family, and one was killed. Although this incident is abrupt, it is not uncommon to compete for treasures in the cultivation world. He paused, the only thing that makes me suspect is that you just met me. I see you. Chen Daoxian frowned. Yes, you see me, the ancestor of the Jin family looked at Chen Daoxian, although you pretended to be nervous just now, I didn't see fear in your eyes. How could a foundation-building cultivator not have fear in his eyes when he first saw Jindan Jinren? Chen Daoxian was silent, and after a while, he said helplessly, Is this why you doubt my identity? The ancestor of the Jin family nodded, it's always right to have a bold suspicion, but your next performance makes me truly sure that you are not Shen Maoqing. Oh. Chen Daoxian looked at him with interest. I clearly showed so much doubt about your identity, if it were the real Shen Maoqing, she would have been lying on the ground at this moment to explain and beg for mercy, instead of refuting me. You are so confident in front of me that you don't look like a foundation-building cultivator at all. The ancestor of the Jin family smiled lightly. Seeing the appearance of the other party, Chen Daoxian simply sat down in front of him, and for the first time seriously looked at the ancestor of the Jin family in front of him. The ancestor of the Jin family had a handsome face, wearing a lavender robe embroidered with gold edging, sitting cross-legged on a futon made of spiritual jade, holding a wisdom pearl. Chen Daoxian was looking at each other, and Jin Chanying was also looking at Chen Daoxian. Chen Daoxuan's identity was broken, so he simply did not continue to disguise, but revealed his original face. Feeling the abundant vitality in Chen Daoxian, Jin Chanying sighed, Do you know? Your name, Chen Daoxian, has long been spread throughout the Xianqing Taoist League. I really did not expect that you would dare to set foot in the hinterland of the Xianqing Dao League if you were not hiding behind the Qianyuan sword sect at this moment. Don't you know that once your deeds are exposed, how many Yuaning cultivators will be sent by the Xianqing Dao League to hunt you down? Since I dare to come, naturally I will not be afraid of the pursuit of Xianqing Dao League. Chen Daoxian paused, It's you, aren't you afraid that I will kill you? Or do you think you can deal with me with your strength and wait until your grandfather comes to help? My grandfather? Jin Chanying shook his head, with a mocking look on his face. Yes, he will indeed save me, but not to save me, but to save himself. It seemed that Jin Chanying's tone was quite resentful, and Chen Daoxian looked at him, Do you have a grudge against your grandfather? Hee, I can't talk about hatred. I have practiced for more than 300 years, and the cultivation resources I enjoyed during this period, even if the direct disciples of Xianyang sect saw it, they would be jealous. And these cultivation resources are all provided by my grandfather, but what he did was not for me, but for himself. Said, Jin Chanying peeled off his Taoist robe, revealing his chest. I saw a complex blood-colored pattern that was round as a hole, deeply imprinted on Jin Chanying's chest. The blood slave contract. Chen Daoxian looked at Jin Chanying's chest and was shocked. The so-called blood slave contract is a very evil slave contract. The object of this slave contract is not outsiders, but one's own lineage. Seeing the blood slave contract on Jin Chanying's chest, Chen Daoxian instantly knew the cause and effect. In the cultivation world, after the cultivator reaches the nascent soul stage, he gradually has the possibility to seize the house. It's just that, although the cultivator can theoretically be revived for another life by taking another person, it will make the cultivator's soul and the body of the robbed person mutually exclusive. In order to solve this problem, some cultivators have developed a method to make their direct descendants the object of their own looting. This method requires that the deceased be cultivated by monks using secret methods from infancy, so that their bodies are more and more in line with the spirits of monks. Until the cultivator Shou Yuan is approaching, he will seize this carefully cultivated body and let him live again. Chen Daoxian, as a cultivator of the Jin Dan stage, has naturally heard of this famous evil secret technique. But it was the first time I saw it with my own eyes. As a family cultivator, Chen Daoxian abhorred the practice of tarnishing family affection and blood. Treat your bloodline as a seed, fertilize and cultivate it, and when the right time comes, pick the fruit of this seed, and the blood slave contract is the means to control this bloodline seed. However, the deed of blood slaves can control the life and death of slaves, but it cannot control the thoughts of slaves. At this point, the blood slave contract is still inferior to the soul seal of the imperial beast sect. Sure enough, when Chen Daoxian saw the blood pattern on Jin Chanying's chest, he immediately understood that this Jin Chanying wanted Jin Yuanjun to die more than he did. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian couldn't help but lower his guard a bit. You want to kill your grandfather? Of course. Jin Chanying blushed. Every day I dream about killing this old man with my own hands. It's just that it is too difficult to break through the nascent soul stage. After my cultivation level was promoted to the 9th level of Jin Dan, the old thief Jin Yuan cut off my supply of resources. Without the pregnant baby pill and the indestructible true meaning, I broke through the nascent soul stage. Chances are very slim. In order to prevent me from escaping, he even ordered me not to step outside the range of his divine sense. In the eyes of outsiders, I, Jin Chanying, look like a real person in the Jin Dan period, but I am greedy for life and fear of death, so I dare not set foot outside the 10,000 li radius of Jinyuan Xiancheng, ha ha ha. At the end, Jin Chanying laughed wildly. Looking at the somewhat neurotic Jin Dan real person in front of him, Chen Daoxian was speechless for a long time. Also an elder, the 13th uncle that Chen Daoxian met was a respectable elder who would rather sacrifice himself and earn a glimmer of hope for the younger generation of the family. However, Jin Chanying's so-called grandfather regards him as a tool that he can use for his own home. At this moment, Chen Daoxian couldn't help feeling some sympathy for the person in front of him. In addition to Jin Chanying himself, the outside world may think that he, as the grandson of Jin Yuanjunjuan, has cast a good child. Since you also want to kill your grandfather, we can work together. Chen Daoxian suggested. When Jin Chanying heard the words, his laughter stopped. He looked at Chen Daoxian, shook his head and said, "No chance. Do you know how many Yuanying true monarchs are in Jinyuan Xianqing now?" "Why, isn't Jinyuan Xianqing only a Yuanying cultivator, Jinyuan Jinjuan?" "1. Jin Chanying shook his head with a smile, stretched out 4 fingers and said, "In today's Jinyuan Xiancheng, there are 4 nascent soul true monarchs. Besides my grandfather, there is a late nascent soul monk and 2 middle nascent soul monks." "What?" Chen Daoxian was shocked. Hearing this news, he couldn't help but feel a little scared. If the plan was carried out smoothly, he would be attacked by the 3 nascent soul true monarchs at the same time when he attacked Jinyuan true monarch. This is too dangerous for Chen Daoxian. 1 late nascent soul, 3 middle nascent souls, a total of 4 Yuanying monks. Moreover, Chen Daoxian still did not know the specific strength of these 4 late nascent soul monks. Even if the strongest among them is similar in strength to true monarch Ming Huang, Chen Daoxian would be hard-pressed to win over him. Although Chen Daoxian promoted the water movement sword intent to the law realm, reaching the initial stage of the water movement law, and he could also use the 2-yield sword formation to initially integrate the water movement law and the space law, so that the power of the law skyrocketed. But no matter how the power skyrockets, whether the fusion law can match the late nascent soul monks is a matter of 2 things. Chen Daoxian's most powerful means has always been the pure yang immortal artifact of the Xingqian Kendo map. But the star Kendo map has a disadvantage, that is, it cannot be used for a long time. When he was able to win the true monarch Ming Huang, the time and place were right and people were indispensable, and it was only a narrow victory. Without the treasure of the star's Kendo map, Chen Daoxian is not an opponent of true monarch Ming Huang. Even if he can use the sword array of Liang Yi now, Chen Daoxian is not very sure. After all, how can he know what the power of the law after fusion is, and he has never fought in actual combat? But now, the opportunity for actual combat has come, but the difficulty is too great, and the 4 nascent soul true monarchs came all at once, which made Chen Daoxian feel a little caught off guard. See Chen Daoxian frowning. Jin Chanying said, "The best I can do is to help you deceive my grandfather, but you have to deal with him within 3 breaths. 3 breaths? Chen Daoxian shook his head. With the strength of the nascent soul cultivator, I only have a chance at most with 1 sword, and the other 3 nascent soul cultivators will be able to arrive in an instant." Hearing this, Jin Chanying frowned. After a long time, he sighed, "If it doesn't work, you can go out of the city. I haven't seen you today, and you haven't seen me either." Hearing this, Chen Daoxian did not speak. At this moment, he faintly retreated in his heart. The 4 nascent soul true monarchs, this is a bit too difficult. The fact that so many Yuanying monks rushed to the front also proved from the side that the strategy of Qianyuan Jianzong had worked. Only in this way, the difficulty of Chen Daoxian's destruction has suddenly soared by more than 1 grade. Originally a monk in the middle of nascent soul, Chen Daoxian did not say that he was able to capture him, but he was quite confident. But now, with the arrival of the 4 Yuanying true monarchs, Chen Daoxian had to think about running away. Even if he can use the star's Kendo map to fight against the 4 nascent soul monks for a short time, it will not last for a long time. After a long time, defeat will be a matter of time. Moreover, Chen Daoxian didn't know what means these 4 true monarchs of nascent soul had. If the other party had a means of restricting his escape, maybe he would really be planted here. Half an hour. Chen Daoxian looked up at Jin Chanying and asked, "Do you know where your grandfather's treasure is?" "Ah." Hearing this, Jin Chanying couldn't help being stunned. He has seen people who want money but not life, but he has never seen such a person who wants money and not life. Seeing that Jin Chanying didn't speak, Chen Daoxian hurriedly said, "Fellow Taoist, don't misunderstand. I mean, do you know where your grandfather's power of creation is stored? Is there a difference between the 2? Jin Chanying looked at Chen Daoxian, quite speechless. But after thinking about it, he nodded and said, "Although I don't know the exact location of my grandfather's treasure room, I can probably guess where it is." "Where?" Chen Daoxian's eyes lit up. "Scarlet Flame Immortal Mansion, my grandfather's dojo." Jin Chanying sneered, "The old thief Jin Yuan is greedy and suspicious by nature, and he doesn't trust anyone at all. His treasures will not be placed anywhere except in the dojo where he sits." Hearing this, Chen Daoxian frowned. "Do you know the positions of the other 3 nascent soul monks?" "I don't know." Jin Chanying shook his head. "However, they are definitely not in my grandfather's Qiyan palace." "Why are you so sure?" "Because my grandfather was a member of the Xianyang sect, and the 3 true monarchs who came to secretly support him belonged to the Qingwei Taoist sect." Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan's heart moved. This news is really important. What Chen Daoxian was most worried about was the confluence of the four nascent soul cultivators. Now that the four nascent soul monks are divided into two divisions, Chen Daoxian will solve them next, and the difficulty will undoubtedly be reduced a lot. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian spit out, and a water-blue fairy sword flew out, which was Chen Daoxuan's flying snow sword. The law manifests. Jin Chanying was startled when he saw Chen Daoxuan's methods. Everyone knows that Chen Daoxian can kill true monarch Ming Huang, and the realm of the avenue must have reached the realm of law. Everyone knows this, but it is unheard of for Chen Daoxian to manifest the law into the appearance of a fairy sword. But Jin Chanying's perception can't be wrong. Although the flying snow sword in front of him has the appearance of a fairy sword, it is a law of water movement. Jin Chanying was shocked when he saw this scene. Chen Daoxuan's hand is not much better than the effect of the avenue's stone tablet. If Chen Daoxian placed this sword in the clan all the time, it would be as if there was a stone tablet on the avenue, which would provide the clansmen with enlightenment at all times. Jin Chanying is also the ancestor of the Jin family. Although he hates Jin Yuanjin extremely, he is no different from the ancestors of other families. This is also the mentality that a normal family ancestor should have towards a family monk. A mentality like Jinjuan Jin Yuan, who sees his descendants as tools of cattle and horses, is an abnormal perverted mentality. Without saying a word, Chen Daoxian stabbed the flying snow sword directly into Jin Chanying's Dantian Qi Si. Seeing the flying sword entering the body, Jin Chanying's expression did not change at all. Although Chen Daoxian agreed to cooperate with him, he still needs at least some insurance. Both parties are very clear about this. Hanging the flying snow sword in Jin Chanying's body, Chen Daoxian nodded and said, let's go to Qiyan Immortal Mansion together. Okay. Jin Chanying felt the terrifying law of water movement in the Dantian Qi Si and nodded. The immortal sword transformed by this law of water movement is more threatening than the blood slave contract on his chest. If he deceives Chen Daoxian only needs to think about it, and his Fei Shui sword can instantly twist Jin Chanying's golden core into pieces. 7017K. Chapter 332. The two escaped lights landed in the Qiyan Immortal Mansion at the same time. As the true monarch dojo, the Qiyan Immortal Mansion covers a much larger area than the Jin family. Although the Qiyan Immortal Mansion is called Immortal Mansion, in fact, this dojo occupies nearly 1/10 of the entire Jinyuan Immortal City. It's really lavish. Chen Daoxian stood in front of the Immortal Mansion and mocked. Jin Chanying on the side also sneered. This old thief enjoys the most, not only for greed for money, but also for women. It's just that in recent years, his lifespan is approaching, and he often retreats in Immortal Mansion to cultivate, but he rarely tossed outside. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian nodded. True monarch Jin Yuan is lustful, and this is no secret within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles in Jinyuan Immortal City. In the past, immortal clans often offered beautiful maids to Jinjuan Jinyuan. It's just that in recent years, Jinyuan Jinjuan has not come forward to accept beautiful maids, and Chen Daoxian has not moved his mind in this regard. Talking room. The two quickly entered the Qiyan Immortal Mansion. Sure enough, along the way, Chen Daoxian met in this Immortal Mansion, all of them were young women. Although these women were not high in cultivation, they all had one thing in common, beautiful appearance. Seeing these beautiful maids, Chen Daoxian couldn't help sighing that the rumors were true. Your Highness. Your Highness. Along the way, the maids in the Immortal Mansion met Jin Chanying, and they all bowed and saluted, showing respect. Seemingly seeing Chen Daoxuan's doubts, Jin Chanying explained, for this old thief, as long as I don't run away or die, he can accommodate me in any matter. In the eyes of outsiders, I am the heir of this Scarlet Flame Immortal Mansion and even this Golden Origin Immortal City, but in fact, he. Jean Chanying sneered again and again. The two walked in the immortal mansion for about half an hour before finally reaching the core area of the immortal mansion. At this time, a slender and charming purple-clothed female cultivator walked towards Chen Daoxian and Chen Daoxian with an elegant gait. Behind the purple-clothed woman, there were also a group of beautiful maids. This is one of the old thief's favorite concubines. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian nodded clearly. The beautiful purple-clothed female cultivator first glanced at Chen Daoxian, then turned to Jean Chanying, frowning and said, "Your Highness Jean, the true monarch never likes you to bring outsiders here. Who is this? Does it have anything to do with you?" Jean Chanying said coldly, "Have you forgotten your identity? Even a concubine and mere concubine dares to question this seat." Feeling the terrifying power on Jean Chanying's body, the glamorous purple-clothed female cultivator suddenly lost her aura, her mouth was flat, and she said aggrieved, "His Royal Highness, the slave family dare not." As he said that, he looked at Jean Chanying with his big watery eyes. Standing aside to see this scene, Chen Daoxian couldn't help but make up for dozens of minutes of restricted-level plot. It seems that what Jean Chanying said is true, that Jean Yuanjin is more indulgent towards him. Seeing that the glamorous purple-clothed women's clothes were soft, Jean Chanying gave up and said coldly, "Ziling, let me ask you, the ancestor is still in retreat." Hearing this, the glamorous female cultivator named Ziling nodded. "In the past few years, the ancestor has been retreating." "Okay, I understand, you can step back." "Yes." Ziling looked at Chen Daoxian again, bowed to the two of them, and left sideways. Watching Ziling and the others leave, Jean Qinyuan continued, "This is the beautiful maid given to the ancestor by a Jin Dan family in the Jinyuan Xianqing sphere of influence. Even though this woman is not a high-level cultivator, her methods are not weak. In less than 10 years, the old thief handed over this immortal mansion to her to take care of." Hearing this, Chen Daoxian shook his head, "For my monks, their own strength is everything." "That's right." Jean Chanying nodded in agreement. If it weren't for his lack of strength, he would have turned against Jin Yuanzhenjuan long ago, and he would have known that he was the target of Jin Yuanzhenjun's body, and he would pretend to call the other party's ancestor all day long. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but glanced at Chen Daoxian enviously. If he had the strength of the one in front of him, how could Jinju and Jin Yuan take away his body? The other side. Although Xiling left Chen Daoxian and the others, her divine sense had been keeping an eye on Chen Daoxian and the others in secret. It stands to reason that with her mere 9th-floor cultivation base in Zifu, she secretly observes Chen Daoxian and Jean Chanying, the two Jin Dan Real people, and she will definitely be discovered. But Xiling practiced a secret technique of divine consciousness. Although this divine sense secret technique cannot perform divine awareness attacks, it can make divine awareness investigation extremely secretive. Chen Daoxian frowned and his footsteps paused slightly. Seeing Chen Daoxian stop suddenly, Jean Chanying felt tight, and quickly said, "What's wrong?" "Fine." Chen Daoxian shook his head. Despite his doubts, Chen Daoxian was reluctant to explain, and Jean Chanying, who was in a weak position, couldn't ask more. The two turned around, and finally stopped in front of a palace. This should be the treasure room of the old thief. Jean Chanying pointed to the palace road in front of him. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian frowned. "Have you ever been in here?" "No." Jean Chanying shook his head. "However, according to what I confided in the Scarlet Flame Immortal Mansion, every time the old thief came here, he acted very mysteriously, and there is a great possibility that this is his treasure room." Hearing this, Chen Daoxian seriously looked at the palace in front of him. This palace occupies a small area, but it is shrouded in a fifth-order formation, and this fifth-order formation is still open. Seeing this, Chen Daoxian had a headache, turned to look at Jean Chanying and said, "Do you have a way to enter the palace?" The unhosted fifth-order formation could not stop Chen Daoxian. But the problem is, once he forcibly breaks the formation, it will inevitably cause a huge movement. At that time, Jin Yuan Jinjuan, who has been disturbed, will definitely come here directly. Chen Daoxuan's idea of using Jin Yuan Zhenjin's treasure to improve his strength will also fail. Jin Chanying shook his head, no. Hearing this answer, Chen Daoxian couldn't help but feel a little worried. Jin Chanying didn't speak anymore. He had already brought him to Jinjuan's treasure room according to Chen Daoxuan's suggestion. As for whether he could open this treasure room, he couldn't guarantee it. Seeing that Chen Daoxian did not speak, Jin Chanying was also a little discouraged. Using the hand in front of him to get rid of Jinyuan Jinjuan is the best way for him to get out of Jinyuan Zhenjin's control, but it seems that it is difficult for Chen Daoxian to compete with the four nascent soul Jinjuan at the same time. Chen Daoxian didn't say a word, turned around this palace for a few times, and finally determined that the formation outside the palace in front of him was a fifth-order low-grade defense formation. To be able to set up a fifth-order defense formation in such a small area is no less difficult than the sixth-order defense formation that covers the entire Jinyuan Xiancheng. Chen Daoxuan's formation realm is a big realm higher than his refining level, reaching the fourth-order high grade, which is not too far from the fifth-order formation master. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian simply sat in the air, his eyes staring at the formation in front of him. When Jin Chanying saw Chen Daoxian sitting here cracking the formation, he couldn't help but shouted that he was too reckless. What is the difference between this and the Arabian Nights? Seeing that Jin Chanying was in a hurry like an ant on a hot pot, Chen Daoxian said in a voice transmission, "Fellow Taoist, instead of being anxious, why don't you help me get rid of the servants of Qian Immortal Mansion, and don't let outsiders disturb me?" Hearing this, Jin Chanying struggled for a while. After a long time, he took a deep breath and nodded, "Okay. Since fellow Taoists are confident, I'll put all my bets on fellow Taoists." Chen Daoxian glanced at him, then turned his head and stopped talking. Jin Chanying is also a decisive person. After making a decision, he immediately left here to support Chen Daoxuan's servants of Qian Immortal Mansion. As for Jinjuan Jinyuan who is in retreat, it is not something he can control. After Jin Chanying left, within a radius of several miles, only Chen Daoxian sat cross-legged. It seems that he is sitting here stupidly, but in fact, Chen Daoxuan's comprehension stars in the sea of knowledge are spinning wildly at the moment. His comprehension is also soaring wildly at this moment. 10 times understanding, 30 times understanding, 50 times understanding, 100 times understanding. After comprehension broke through 100 times, the consumption of comprehension stars suddenly rose a step. Compared with the improvement of comprehension within 100 times, the comprehension is more than 100 times, and each time the comprehension is doubled, the consumption of comprehension stardust doubles. With such a superposition, no matter how big Chen Daoxuan's comprehension stars are, he can't stand this consumption speed. 108 times, enough. Chen Daoxian was deeply distressed when he saw that in the space of the sea of knowledge, the comprehension stars became smaller at a speed visible to the naked eye. If you invest so much, if the treasure of Jinyuan Jinjuan can't be filled, it will be a big loss. The thought in his heart was fleeting, and Chen Daoxian concentrated on comprehending the fifth-order low-grade defense formation in front of him. In the eyes of ordinary monks, the fifth-order formation is arranged with the help of the power of heaven and earth. After the formation eyes and formation patterns are all integrated into the world, and there is no flaw at all. But in the eyes of the same-order array masters, the fifth-order array method is not without flaws. Even though Chen Daoxuan's formation realm has only reached the 4th level, with the blessing of 108 times his understanding, he can see the flaws of this formation. In Chen Daoxuan's eyes, the light of spirituality kept flickering. In the end, his eyes fell on the plaque of the palace. A smile appeared on Chen Daoxuan's face. The flaw in the formation is actually here. Chen Daoxian stood up and stretched out his palm. In the palm of his hand, a mysterious array of lines condensed, and finally, Chen Daoxian waved at the plaque of the palace. This fifth-order low-grade defense formation slowly dissipated, without causing any movement. See the formation dissipate. A flash of surprise flashed in Chen Daoxuan's eyes, and he immediately raised his legs and walked towards the palace. After entering the palace, Chen Daoxian was stunned by the sight in front of him. Compared with the storage ring of true monarch Ming Huang, the treasures in the palace in front of him are a dazzling array. In comparison, the Ming Huang Zhenjuan in the late Yuanning period was really poor. Of course, it is more likely that all the wealth of true monarch Ming Huang is not just in a storage ring. Stepping into the palace, the first thing that catches your eye is a piece of high-level magic weapon. At the point of entry, one by one is held up in the air by the floating formation, and the magical instruments overflowing with spiritual light are dazzling people's eyes. At first glance, none of these instruments was lower than the 4th rank. Moreover, the types of instruments in front of them are complete, including offensive, defensive, auxiliary, and so on. And each type of magic weapon has different styles. For example, among the offensive instruments, there are single-handled flying swords, complete sets of female and female flying swords, sun and moon rings, and seals, etc. As Chen Daoxuan's pace deepened, he found that the rank of the instruments was getting higher and higher. In the end, there were actually 13 fifth-order instruments presented in front of him. Most of the 13 fifth-order artifacts were low-rank 5th rank and middle-rank 5th rank artifacts, and there were only 3 high-rank 5th rank artifacts. Among them, there are 2 fifth-order high-grade instruments that are in the style of flying swords. These 2 flying swords, one is a fire attribute flying sword, and the other is a metal flying sword. When Chen Daoxian saw these 2 flying swords, he immediately grabbed them overjoyedly. Under the absorption of his mana, the 2 masterless flying swords flew to his palm without hindrance, turning into 2 small swords about 3 inches long, hovering in his palm. Good baby! Chen Daoxian was very excited when he saw 2 high-grade 5th rank flying swords. So far, these 2 flying swords are the highest grade flying swords he has obtained. Even Fei Xue and Qingying Shuangjian who have followed him all the way up to now are only low-rank 5th rank and middle-ranking 5th rank. As for the Xianhuang Zhentian Pagoda, although it is a 5th-order high-grade magic weapon, it is a Taoist magic weapon. It is an auxiliary magic weapon, not an offensive magic weapon, nor a flying sword. For Chen Daoxian, a sword cultivator, his obsession with flying swords is obviously far more than other types of instruments. After playing with the flying sword for a while, Chen Daoxian reluctantly put it into the storage ring. And put the other 11 fifth-order instruments and hundreds of 4th-order instruments into the storage ring. Until this moment, Chen Daoxian really felt how rich the Jinyuan Zhenjuan who had been in Jinyuan Xiancheng for more than 2,000 years. 11 fifth-order instruments, ordinary nascent soul cultivators, with 3 or 5 fifth-order instruments in their entire net worth, would be considered pretty good. Because the 5th-order magic weapon is different from the low-level magic weapon, this thing is not something you can buy if you have a spirit stone. Usually, it is necessary for the cultivator of Yuanying to use the power of good fortune to refine and promote, in order to promote the 4th-order magic weapon to the 5th order. And how precious the power of creation is, even a Yuanying cultivator has to spend a lot of time to extract it from the spirit stone. In this way, the 5th-order magical tools are naturally very rare. That's it, Jinyuan Zhenjuan has still collected 13 5th-order instruments for more than 2,000 years. Moreover, this is not all his net worth. Because any cultivator must keep the best and most suitable instruments for his own use, and only those instruments that cannot be used or have different attributes will be collected. This also means that there are more than 13 fifth-order instruments in the hands of Jin Yuanjin. This old guy, there are so many fifth-order magic tools. Chen Daoxian was speechless. How much has he greed for these years? Shaking his head, Chen Daoxian no longer thought about it. No matter how much the other party embezzled, at this moment, all these things belonged to him. After inventorying the instruments, Chen Daoxian didn't bother to look at other treasures, and instead looked for the power of good fortune. He has not forgotten the purpose of his trip. Only by finding a large amount of the power of creation can he raise both his water law and space law to the high level of the law realm. At that time, he will have the confidence to face the four nascent soul true monarchs. Taking 10,000 steps back, even with the power of the two-yield sword formation and the combination of the water movement law and the space law of the high level of the law, it is still no match for the four nascent soul true monarchs. But running under their siege was no problem. Chapter 333. No. Qin Daoxian searched for a long time in the palace where Jinjuan Jinyuan was hiding treasures, but he didn't find a trace of the power of creation. Why not? Qin Daoxian couldn't believe it. Not only is there no power of creation, but the inextinguishable true meaning of helping nascent soul cultivators to improve their body refinement, there is no trace in this treasure palace. There are magic tools, spirit armor, and various fourth-order spiritual pills and medicines, but there is no power of creation and indestructible true meaning. Qin Daoxian frowned. No, there are no treasures to help Jindan stage cultivators break through to nascent soul stage. After searching for a long time, Qin Daoxian found a problem. Not only are there no treasures to enhance the cultivation and strength of the nascent soul cultivators, but there are also no spiritual pills that assist the Jindan cultivators to break through. Even, there is no elixir to improve the cultivation of Jindan stage cultivators. It seems Jinyuan Jinjuan did not collect such treasures to enhance the cultivation of Jindan cultivators, as well as the strength and cultivation of nascent soul cultivators. But how is this possible? Qin Daoxian frowned. Could it be that? He raised his head. Jinyuan Jinjuan knew for a long time that Jin Chanying knew about this treasure room, and this palace was deliberately displayed by Jinyuan Jinjuan. Qin Daoxian could imagine that if Jin Chanying really abolished the power of 9 bulls and 2 tigers and opened the defense formation of the palace, only to find that there was no treasure he wanted in the palace. That sense of loss is expected to drive Jin Chanying crazy and turn him into a walking corpse with no thought and no will to resist. I'm afraid this is what Jinjuan Jinyuan wants. Qin Daoxian thought to himself. However, Qin Daoxian doesn't care if there is a pregnancy and baby pill, but without the power of good fortune, Qin Daoxian's thoughts of breaking through in the battle are all in vain. Is it really necessary to retreat strategically? Just when Qin Daoxian hesitated, he suddenly raised his head and glanced at the gate of the palace. Come out. Qin Daoxian said indifferently. Long before entering the palace, Qin Daoxian vaguely felt that there was an obscure consciousness peeping at him. But Qin Daoxian can be sure that the other party is not a Yuaniing cultivator, because the sense of threat to him by this spiritual sense is completely zero, and it cannot be the spiritual consciousness of the Yuaniing cultivator at all. The voice just fell. At the gate of the palace, a purple figure slowly appeared. It's you. Qin Daoxian's eyes narrowed slightly. What a thief, who dares to steal the treasure of the true monarch? Aren't you afraid that I will tell the true monarch and smash you to ashes? Ziling put on a condescending posture, her charming eyes staring coldly at Qin Daoxian. Hearing this threat, Qin Daoxian laughed instead of anger. Fairy, don't be joking, you dare to fornicate with Jinyuan Zhenjin's own grandson, and you dare to tell me about stealing his treasure? Hearing Qin Daoxian say that she was having an affair with Jin Chanying, Ziling's delicate face immediately blushed, and her delicate body trembled slightly with anger. Good thief, you. She stretched out her green jade fingers, pointed at Qin Daoxian, and was speechless for a while. Since the fairy is here, instead of going to Jinyuan Jinjuan to inform, I want to come to our position, and you also want to get rid of Jinyuan's engine's control, am I right? Qin Daoxian looked at the other party with certainty. You are talking nonsense. Ziling waved her sleeves abruptly. I am the concubine most favored by the true monarch, how can I agree with you, a thief? Ha, why do you have to deceive yourself, fairy? If you don't agree with me, how can you have an affair with that Jin Chanying? if you don't agree with me, how can you find out that an outsider has stolen the treasures of Jin Yuanjinjuan without notifying Jin Yuanjinjuan? Chen Daoxian asked one after another, causing Ziling to open her mouth, but she couldn't say anything to refute. Even if you agree with your position, how can you be a cultivator in the early stage of Jin Dan? How can you get Jin Yuanjinjuan? Ziling looked rather lonely. She raised her head and looked at Chen Daoxian. If you are interested, you should leave the treasure, and I think I didn't see anything. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian was unmoved, but instead said, looking at your appearance, it seems that you know very well about the treasure of Jin Yuanjinjuan. Ziling frowned and said strangely, you are a person who kindly persuaded you to let you go, but you were not grateful, but instead asked me if I knew about the treasure of the true monarch. How? You are not satisfied with stealing so many treasures, and you are willing to give up if you want to hollow out all the real monarch's old bottom. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian's eyes lit up. Sure enough, this female cultivator named Ziling really knew the real treasure of Jin Yuanjinjuan. I ask you, do you want to get rid of Jin Yuan's engine's control? Chen Daoxian stared at her fixedly. Ziling was a little impatient and stared. Even if I want to get rid of Jin Yuan's engine's control, what can you do if you are a cultivator in the early stage of Jin Dan? Do you think you are Chen Daoxian from Zhennan Xiancheng? Hearing this, Chen Daoxian widened his eyes. The two stared wide-eyed in the palace, and for a while, Chen Daoxian had a headache how to answer each other. Tell her that he is Chen Daoxian. Isn't this rubbing the opponent's IQ on the ground? Half an hour. Ziling sneered, why, don't you talk big now? Chen Daoxian was quite speechless, and directly pointed his finger at her. Immediately, an invisible space fluctuation swept across Ziling's body, and then, a layer of space barriers wrapped Ziling tightly. See this scene. Ziling frowned first, then touched the space barrier formed by the space cage, and looked at Chen Daoxian in confusion. What are you doing? Chen Daoxian. Nothing. Chen Daoxian suddenly felt that it was really difficult for him to explain his strength to this female cultivator named Ziling. Because even if she easily defeated the other party, in her cognition, isn't it right and proper for the Jin Dan cultivator to defeat the Zifu cultivator? The crux of the question is, how can he convince Ziling that his strength is stronger than that of Jin Yuanjinjuan, and he can let her get rid of Jin Yuan's engine's control? Seeing that Chen Daoxian did not speak, Ziling looked at him strangely and asked, why don't you speak? The lie was pierced, and you can't speak. Chen Daoxian. That's it, Ziling sighed, since I can cooperate with Jin Chanying, I don't care if you have a collaborator in the early stage of Jin Dan. Speaking of this, Ziling turned serious. Jin Yuan's engine's life is coming, he wants to take Jin Chanying's body before the end of his life, and I, after Jin Yuanzhen successfully took the house, broke through the Yuan again. The key to infancy. Ding furnace? Chen Daoxian immediately understood the meaning of Ziling's words, you are the body of Zhouyin Xuanqi. Ziling nodded bitterly. In the world of immortals, it is very common to regard beautiful female cultivators as cauldrons. If you don't consider moral perception, the Ding furnace is even better than the elixir to a certain extent. Cultivators take spiritual pills to practice, and there are still erysipelas left in the body, so they cannot take them frequently. The cauldron is different. The monks use the cauldron to repair and cultivate, and they follow the yin-yang avenue. Not to mention that this process makes people feel relaxed and happy, and the sequelae of the key mining and repairing practice are extremely small. This is also the reason why the cauldron in the immortal world has been repeatedly banned. After all, the high-ranking female cultivator also hated the matter of the cauldron. Many famous fairies in Xianyunzhu saw a male cultivator treat a female cultivator as a cauldron, and they usually drew their swords directly without saying a word. Even so, the wind of the cauldron is still prohibited. It stands to reason that the supreme ruler of Wan Xinghai, the sect master of Qianyuan Jianzong, is a female cultivator. Shouldn't Wan Xinghai be reduced to a cauldron without a female cultivator? In fact, In the hundreds of years when Wan Xinghai attacked Izumo, countless captured female cultivators have become the cauldrons of Wan Xinghai cultivators. The first time Chen Daoxian participated in the auction in Xianqing of Guang'an Mansion, he met the female cultivator prisoner of war who was auctioned. It can be said that beauty without strength is often a sin in the world of immortals, and it will be targeted by countless evil cultivators. The female nun named Ziling in front of her is a typical example. If it is said that ordinary cauldrons are only of great help to monks' practice, then the female cultivator of the nine yin and mysterious body is the most effective of all cauldrons. No one. Using the body of Join profound concubine as a cauldron can not only quickly help the cultivator improve his cultivation, but more importantly, she can also help the male cultivator to break through the threshold of the great realm. For example, the Zifu period breaks through to the Jindan period, and the Jindan period breaks through to the Yuanying period. Even, a female cultivator with the body of the nine yin profound concubine is high enough to even break through from the nascent soul stage to the nascent soul stage. This kind of cauldron can be of great help. This beautiful female cultivator named Ziling, when she heard Chen Daoxian revealing his identity as a mysterious body of nine yin, not only did not have the slightest pride, but a little bit of hatred. If it weren't for the mysterious body of Join, perhaps she would not have been targeted by Zhenju and Jinyuan. Hearing that Ziling has the body of Join Xianzhang, Chen Daoxian knew what he had guessed before, that Jin Chanying had an improper relationship with the other party, so the possibility is unlikely. Because this female cultivator in front of him will be of great help to Jin Yuanjin to break through the nascent soul stage again after taking the house in the future, Jin Yuanjin will never allow Jin Chanying to touch Ziling. Chen Daoxian was sure that this man named Ziling must have the means of restraint laid down by Zhenju and Jin Yuan. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian finally understood why this female cultivator named Ziling dared to come to this treasure room to find him directly. It turned out to be fearless. Not caring to sympathize with the other party, Chen Daoxian nodded. Since you promised to cooperate, then show the sincerity of cooperation. Hearing this, Ziling gave Chen Daoxian a deep look. I have to say, the courage and appetite of fellow Taoists are the greatest I have ever seen. Thanks for the compliment. Seeing Chen Daoxian's cheeky appearance, Ziling said angrily, this is where the treasure of true monarch Jin Yuan is located, but his treasure is divided into light and dark. The difference between light and dark? Chen Daoxian looked at her thoughtfully. Ziling didn't give a shit, and walked straight to a decorated vase in the treasure room. She pinched the magic formula and pointed at the vase. Suddenly, the vase spun up and down. After about hundreds of turns, a light curtain appeared in front of Chen Daoxian and Ziling, Dongtian. Chen Daoxian secretly called Jin Yuanjin Juan cunning. Yes, it's Dongtian. Ziling nodded and took the lead in walking towards Dongtian. Without saying a word, Chen Daoxian followed her directly and walked into the cave. Stepping into the cave, a scene of birds chirping and flowers comes into view, giving people a sense of willows and flowers. The cave built by Zhenju and Jinyuan is not very big, but what is installed here is the essence of his thousands of years of savings. Chen Daoxian found that what existed the most in this cave was not the power of creation, but the true meaning of immortality. Indestructible true meaning, the shape is a strange substance as dark as ink. This kind of material is very strange. When scattered, it is like smoke, and it is misty. When gathered, it is like a diamond, and it weighs more than 10,000 tons. Inside the cave, boxes filled with immortality filled the entire courtyard. Chen Daoxian glanced at it and found that there were actually 17 boxes. When the treasure box was opened, each treasure box was densely packed with inextinguishable true meaning aggregates shaped like black diamonds. Compared with the true meaning of immortality, Jinyuan Zhenjuan has much less power of creation. Perhaps in Jinyuan Zhenjin's opinion, the power of good fortune is far less precious than the true meaning of immortality. After all, although the power of good fortune can improve the rank of instruments, it cannot directly improve the cultivation of monks. After all, For monks, their own cultivation and the realm of the great Tao are the fundamentals. Magical instruments are precious, but in the final analysis they are only external forces. As long as the cultivation base can break through, do you still worry about finding a suitable magic weapon in the future? But for Chen Daoxian, the preciousness of the power of creation is by no means under the true meaning of immortality. Even for now, it is far more than the true meaning of immortality. Because the indestructible true meaning is not available to him now, with his skull-shattering cultivation base, the indestructible true meaning is the most violent poison in the world. As long as it is integrated into the body, it will completely disintegrate his body. The treasure of immortal true meaning can only be used little by little if the cultivator's body refinement reaches the peak of the blood-dripping realm. Of course, if the cultivator's Tao realm is high enough, it is not impossible to use the immortal true meaning in advance under the protection of the Tao law, but the premise is that the intake of the immortal true meaning is strictly controlled. Just with Chen Daoxuan's body training, no matter how high the Tao realm is. With the strength of his physical body, it is estimated that after encountering the true meaning of immortality, the physical body will gasify directly, and it will be too late for rescue. Now he even opens the treasure chest containing the true meaning of immortality, and it is opened with the power of the law condensed by the law of space, and he does not dare to use mana casually. Chen Daoxian was afraid that this thing would infect his body along the mana. On the side, Ziling saw that Chen Daoxian was actually daring to open the treasure chest containing the true meaning of immortality, and she was suddenly shocked. Just wanted to scold, but found Chen Daoxian standing there safe and sound. The words of scolding could not help but hold back. She stared at Chen Daoxian with her beautiful eyes and said, 17 treasure chests, 3 bottles of the power of creation, these are all the hidden treasures of Zhenjuan Jinyuan. In particular, these 17 treasure chests are enough for a cultivator in the early nascent soul who has just merged with the indestructible true meaning into his body, and cultivated into an indestructible true body. You actually know the real body of immortality? Chen Daoxian looked at Ziling playfully. Humph. Ziling snorted softly and turned her head. Seeing that Ziling was unhappy, Chen Daoxian immediately skipped this topic. I didn't expect that Zhenjuan Jinyuan would actually trust you so much. He thought that after taking Jin Chanying, I, a female cultivator of the 9 profound body, can cooperate with his double cultivation to obtain the best cultivation effect. Jin Yuan Zhenjin's ambition is very big, thinking of impacting the Yuan dynasty. God period. I can tell. Chen Daoxian couldn't help nodding when he saw the various preparations of this true monarch Jin Yuan. 7017K. Chapter 334. Chen Daoxian flipped through the inextinguishable true meaning aggregate like a black diamond for a while, then covered the treasure chest, put it aside, and turned to look at the 3 bottles of the power of creation. He stretched out his hand and took the 3 jade bottles containing the power of creation into his palm, and he couldn't help but breathe a little too quickly. Aside. Ziling was quite surprised when she saw Chen Daoxuan's actions. In her opinion, although the power of creation is precious, it is far from the true meaning of immortality. After all, the true meaning of immortality is a treasure for improving the cultivation of cultivators, and the power of good fortune is just a treasure to promote the magic weapon, which is far from comparable to the true meaning of immortality. Because for monks, cultivation is the foundation. Although he couldn't understand it, Ziling didn't ask any more questions. Okay, you can go out. Chen Daoxian waved his hands without turning his head. You. Ziling was anxious. She had seen people crossing the river and demolishing bridges, but she had never seen someone as anxious as Chen Daoxian. Chen Daoxian turned around and saw the angry Ziling. He immediately understood what was going on, and smiled. Fairy Ziling, don't worry, I will do what I promise you. Fairy goes out and waits first. I am here. Are you still worried that I will run away? When Xiling heard this, she thought about what Chen Daoxian said was reasonable, and nodded, "I'll believe you for a while." After all, the light flashed, and he came out of the cave. Chen Daoxuan's consciousness followed closely and found that after Xiling had left the cave, he walked straight out of the treasure palace, and his heart relaxed slightly. Now, there was only Chen Daoxian left in this small cave. He didn't care about being reserved, and immediately opened the jade bottle, and the power of fortune like chalcedony came into view. Chen Daoxian swept his consciousness and found that the power of creation in this jade bottle actually contained 100 drops. 3 bottles are 300 drops of the power of creation, and it takes 300 years of hard work by a nascent soul true monarch. Although these powers of good fortune are quite large, they are still too little for Zhenjuan Jin Yuan, a cultivator of the nascent soul stage who is nearing his lifespan. But Chen Daoxian was relieved when he thought about the 13 fifth-order artifacts he found in the treasure palace. You must know that cultivating a magic weapon to the 5th rank is not a small amount of good fortune. Perhaps, Jinyuan Zhenjuan has spent most of the power of creation. In fact, only a very small number of nascent soul monks can store a large amount of the power of creation. Generally, the true monarch Yuaning accumulates 50 or 60 drops of the power of creation, and will use it to promote his own magic weapon. A nascent soul cultivator like Zhenjuan Jin Yuan, who has 300 drops of the power of creation in his hands, is considered relatively rich among cultivators of the same rank. As Xiling wondered, although these 300 drops of the power of creation are not low in value to the nascent soul cultivator, it is not necessarily how precious they are. After all, the power of creation can be extracted by a nascent soul cultivator. This thing is precious, and it is only aimed at the monks below the nascent soul period. For nascent soul cultivators, unless the amount of the power of creation is very large, it is not really a precious treasure. The 3 bottles of the power of creation in Chen Daoxuan's hands are far from being very large in number. However, although the number of these powers of creation is not large, it is enough to make my law of space or law of water movement improve again. Chen Daoxian secretly rejoiced in his heart. He has calculated that, generally speaking, it takes about 50 drops of the power of creation to promote the 4th rank high-grade flying sword to the 5th rank low-grade. As for how much it would take to upgrade a 5th rank low-grade Feijian to a 5th rank middle rank, Chen Daoxian was really not sure. Because his space law was promoted from the first stage of the law realm to the middle stage of the law realm. This kind of comprehension sublimation will only appear for a short period of time after the cultivator has broken through a great realm. This is also the reason why many cultivators of the Zifu are not high on the Dao realm, but after breaking through the golden core stage, the Dao realm has advanced by leaps and bounds. After thinking about it, Chen Daoxian stretched out his hand, and a transparent flying sword about 3 inches long appeared in his palm. 300 drops of the power of good fortune, in the end, is it promoted to Feishua sword or Qingying sword? Chen Daoxian thought secretly. If he is promoted to Feishua sword, Chen Daoxian is more than 90% sure that he can be promoted to the 5th rank mid-rank. But if he is promoted to Qingying sword, he can't guarantee it. Since the 2 natal flying swords merged with the sword intent, he realized, the power of creation required to promote them has also skyrocketed. If he is promoted to ordinary flying sword, he has never heard that the cost of the power of creation will be so great. However, Chen Daoxian is satisfied that the Star Sword Dao map can consume the power of good fortune, and promote the law of the avenue while promoting the magic weapon. As for how much the power of good fortune is consumed, he really cannot be demanding. The promotion of the law of water movement to the middle of the law realm will not improve my strength very much, and the law of water movement and the law of space are in the same realm, so it will be more difficult to integrate. Instead of this, it is better to concentrate all the power of creation and fight to see if the space law can be promoted to the high level of the law realm. When the space law is promoted to the high level of the law, I can master the space strangulation, the power of killing skyrockets, and supplemented by the fusion of the water movement law, it can increase the power of the space law. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian decided to fight and be promoted to Qingying sword. Chen Daoxian is not a hesitant. Since he decided to be promoted to Qingying sword, Chen Daoxian decisively opened the 3 jade bottles filled with the power of creation, and poured all the power of creation on the 3-inch transparent flying sword. Soon, a drop of the chalcedony-like power of fortune melted into the transparent blade. As the power of good fortune was integrated into the Qingying sword, the original 5th-rank middle-grade Qingying sword suddenly soared in aura. In mid-air, mysterious formations appeared out of thin air, and they all merged into the Qingying sword. The formation method is self-contained, and the formation is integrated into the device. Although it is not the first time to see this scene, Chen Daoxian is still shocked by this magical scene every time he sees it. Not long after the last drop of the power of creation was integrated into the Qingying sword, the last array pattern also merged into the Qingying sword. At this moment, the Qingying sword began to vibrate violently, as if something was brewing in it, trying to break out of its shell. Around the Qingying sword, the space is like a water pattern, rippling outward in circles. Not good. Seeing the spatial fluctuations that oscillated like water ripples, Chen Daoxian secretly cried out in his heart. Sure enough, as he had guessed. This cave can't stand the toss of the Qingying sword after the spatial law is embodied. Only when the other party rippled the 3rd circle of spatial ripples, the entire cave began to crumble, as if it would collapse completely in the next second. See this scene. Chen Daoxian couldn't care about the Qingying sword that was being promoted, and immediately took the Qingying sword and the remaining 17 boxes of indestructible true meaning into his pocket, and got out of this cave. Just when Chen Daoxian stepped out of the cave with his forefoot. Boom, a dull thunder-like explosion suddenly sounded in the treasure palace. With the sound of the explosion, the small cave where Jinjuan Jinyuan was hiding his treasure shattered. Who? A thunderous roar suddenly sounded in the Scarlet Flame Immortal Mansion. Hearing this roar, all the maids in the Qiyan Immortal Mansion fell to their knees, trembling all over. Outside the treasure palace, Jin Chanying and Xiling both turned pale. Don't look at how daring they were when they calculated Jin Yuanjinjuan, but when they really faced the anger of a nascent soul cultivator, they were still overwhelmed with fright. Jin Chanying is a little better, after all, his cultivation base has reached the 9th level of Jindan, and he is only 1 step away from the nascent soul stage. Xiling, the 9th floor cultivator of the Z mansion, was so frightened that he didn't even dare to breathe, and he was completely in a state of no control. Just when the two were in a panic, a terrifying figure condescendingly appeared in front of the two of them. If it's not Jinjuan Jinyuan, who is he? Jin Yuanjinjuan was wearing a red gold python robe and a jade crown. His face was rosy and delicate like a baby. Looking at his face, Jin Yuanjinjuan was very similar to Jin Chanying. The only difference between the two is that Jin Yuanjinjuan is full of silver hair, while Jin Chanying looks very young. At this moment, Jin Yuanzhen's face was ashen. He stared at Jin Chanying and said, "Two people who eat inside and outside, it's in vain that I value you so much on weekdays." Hear this. Xiling didn't react yet, but Jin Chanying was completely blown away. Ha, take it seriously. He seemed mad. It's just you who deserves to respect me. That's right, all the resources I have enjoyed since I was a child were provided to me by you, but you didn't do it for me, it was for yourself. Saying that, Jin Chanying tore the clothes on his chest, exposing his chest. What is this? You tell me, what is this? Jin Chanying's face flushed. The contract of blood slaves, this is what you value. Listening to Jin Chanying's roar, he seemed to vent. Jin Yuanzhenjin's face was as usual, and he said coldly, "Nya barrier thing, are you finished?" "I." Jin Chanying stared at him fiercely, panting like a cow, but after all, he didn't dare to speak. When you're done talking, it's time to talk about it. True monarch Jin Yuan continued, that's right, I admit that I have the idea of taking you as the object of my body, but that's just an idea. Do you think I must be yours? Hearing this, Jin Chanying pursed her lips and stopped talking. Of course he knew this. If he hadn't known that Jinjuan Jin Yuan had other spare tires, he would not have died without a doubt, and he would have resisted long ago. The reason why Jin Chanying has not made up his mind to resist is because he knows that he is not a mortal situation. Seeing that Jin Chanying was no longer speaking, Jinjuan Jin Yuan turned his head to look at Ziling, and said coldly, what about you, cheap maid? Why did you betray this seat? This seat is not good enough for you. In order to follow your heart, for so many years, this seat has forcibly endured not touching you, and also handed over everything to you in the Qian immortal mansion. Is this how you repay my trust? When Ziling heard this, her anger completely overwhelmed her fear. With a thump in her head, she said hoarsely, are you good to me? Back then my parents didn't want me to enter this tiger's den, and both of them died. Do you dare to say that this has nothing to do with you? In your Qian immortal mansion, you have more women than the sergeant who guards the city. Old demon Jin Yuan, you have recruited so many female cultivators, and you have long been notorious in Izumo. Do you think I don't know? That's right, you too, today finally spoke out what was in your heart. True monarch Jin Yuan said with a sneer, but even if you are angry, so what? Do you think that you can escape the palm of this seat just by relying on you? Hearing this, Jin Chanying and Ziling couldn't help but feel angry. True monarch Jin Yuan is right, don't look at his nearshou Yuan, but he is a mid-wanting cultivator after all, and dealing with a late-stage Jin Dan cultivator and a late-stage Zifu cultivator is just like playing. Not all Jin Dan cultivators are as perverted as Chen Daoxian. It is the norm in the world of immortals that the Yuanying cultivator kills the Jin Dan cultivator like killing a dog. Seeing that the two did not speak, Jinjuan Jin Yuan looked at Jin Chanying and snorted coldly, after all, this lowly maid is an outsider, he betrayed this seat can bear it, you are a wicked obstacle, you actually eat inside and out, and cooperate with outsiders to steal the old man. The treasures of my ancestors should be punished. The words just finished. Jinjuan Jin Yuan stretched out his palm and grabbed it towards Jin Chanying. Seeing this, Jin Chanying certainly didn't want to sit still. He immediately used his whole Bodhis mana and was ready to fight to the death, but suddenly he felt his whole body sink, as if 10 mountains were pressing on him, making him unable to move. This. Jin Chanying's heart trembled, the law of soil movement, the tenfold mountain situation. Jinjuan Jin Yuan said with a smile, since you recognize the old man's method, why don't you just capture it? Don't think about it. Stubborn. True monarch Jin Yuan no longer held his hand, and the tenfold mountain situation broke out with all his strength. This time, the mana in Jin Chanying's body became like lead and mercury, so heavy that it could hardly function. No matter how much Jin Dan in his dantian is urged, his mana will not obey. Seeing this scene, Jin Chanying finally panicked. A Jin Dan cultivator lost his control of mana, and at least lost 70% to 80% of his strength. In addition, his body was also crushed by the tenfold mountain, and he couldn't move. Seeing his appearance, Jin Yuan Jinjuan seemed to be unresolved, and the power of the tenfold mountain broke out again. Boom! Jin Chanying was pressed to kneel on the jade ground outside the palace, and the rubble sputtered, slicing Ziling's pretty face with blood. Seeing that he had completely suppressed Jin Chanying, Jinjuan Jin Yuan nodded with satisfaction, and immediately grabbed him with his bare hands. At this moment, a sudden change occurred. I saw a flying sword rushing out from Jin Chanying's dantian. This Bingfijian appeared too abruptly, and the speed was extremely fast. Even if Jin Yuan Jinjuan was in the middle of Yuan Ying's cultivation base, he couldn't react at such a close distance. Jinjuan Jin Yuan felt the power of this sword, and a sense of panic surged in his heart. The power of the law. He felt the power of the law on this flying sword. It is the Yuanying cultivator, and the Yuanying cultivator is attacking him. Zhenjuan Jin Yuan immediately spread his consciousness wildly, and at the critical moment, a layer of spiritual armor covered the surface of his body, blocking the flying snow sword from sneak attacking. Clang! With a loud bang, the figure of Jin Yuan Zhenjuan flew in response, smashing one palace after another. 7017K. Chapter 335. It's not dead. Inside the treasure palace, a white figure slowly walked out, his face full of regret. At the same time, in Jinyuan Xiancheng, 3 powerful auras suddenly rose from 3 directions in the city, and rushed towards the direction of Qiyan Xianfu at an extremely fast speed. Among them, the one in the northwest direction is the most terrifying. Even with Chen Daoxuan's strength, he couldn't help but look in the northwest direction. This moment, the originally noisy Jinyuan Xiancheng gradually became quiet under the suppression of these 3 terrifying auras. Although the low-level cultivators didn't realize what happened, the apocalyptic sense of panic still prevented them from making any noise. As for Jin Chanying and Ziling, who were at the center of the storm, they were even more frightened and pale. Especially Jin Chanying, as a 9th-level cultivator of Jindan, when he heard Chen Daoxuan's amazing record, he couldn't help but feel a little bit of nascent soul cultivator at the same time with admiration. In fact, it's not just him, many Jindan cultivators will give birth to a kind of nascent soul cultivator after hearing about Chen Daoxuan's initial Jindan cultivation base and the shocking record of beheading Minghuang Zhenjuan, a late nascent soul cultivator. This is human nature, they will always unconsciously think that Chen Daoxuan's opponent is too weak, not Chen Daoxian himself too strong. The same is true for Jin Chanying. Because of this mentality, after he guessed Chen Daoxuan's identity for the first time, although he thought that his strength was not as good as that of the other party, he was still able to talk freely in front of him. If he knew that the strength gap between the 2 sides was so huge, it would be difficult to speak smoothly in front of Chen Daoxian. This is the situation at the moment. After feeling the 3 extremely terrifying auras coming from the horizon, Jin Chanying could not wait to find a safe crack to burrow in to avoid this glorious power. This is also the result of the 3 nascent soul true monarchs concentrating most of their aura on Chen Daoxian. Jin Chanying even doubted whether he would have the courage to attack the 3 nascent soul true monarchs if the other party concentrated his aura on him. As for Xiling on the side, from her trembling body, you can see her current state. It's just that Jin Chanying was a little surprised that a monk on the 9th floor of the Purple Mansion was able to stand still under the aura of a monk in the nascent soul period. Based on this alone, Ziling's true strength is definitely the top one among the cultivators of the Zifu. Chen Daoxian slowly walked out of the palace step by step. As his steps got closer and closer to Jin Chanying and Ziling, the pressure on the 2 became less and less. Who? At this time, Ziling, whose pretty face was pale, finally had the opportunity to take a deep breath. After taking a few breaths, Ziling looked at Chen Daoxian with a hint of gratitude. Jin Chanying's gaze towards Chen Daoxian was more complicated, with admiration, jealousy, and shame. He admired and envied Chen Daoxian, who was also a Jindan cultivator, but had such a heaven-defying strength. He was ashamed that the 2 were called collaborators, but in fact he couldn't help at all. A bystander in this battle, no, Jin Chanying suspects that together with this battle, he doesn't even have the chance to watch at close range. This undoubtedly made it difficult for him, who was naturally proud, to accept. But no matter how hard it is to accept, the fact is the fact. Although Chen Daoxian walked past him and took all the pressure, his eyes were not focused on him and Xiling. Now, all Chen Daoxuan's mind was focused on the 3 Yuaning true monarchs who arrived quickly, especially the late Yuaning cultivator of the Qingwei Taoist sect. To Qin Daoxuan's surprise, this late nascent soul true monarch was actually a female cultivator. According to the information Qin Daoxian had learned in advance, among the nascent soul cultivators in the Qingwei Taoist sect, the proportion of female cultivators was extremely low, about less than 10%. As for the female cultivators in the late nascent soul, the number was even smaller. As far as he knew, there were only 3 female cultivators in the entire Qingwei Taoist sect who had reached the late nascent soul. And the most famous one is undoubtedly the Qingwei Taoist Palace Master Yuyue. From his name, it can be seen that the Palace Master of Yuyue is on the same level as the Palace Master of the 7th Palace of Qianyuan Sword Sect. Top True Monarch. At this moment, Qin Daoxian could only pray secretly in his heart. The person who came here was not the Palace Master Yuyue, but someone else. Otherwise, the outcome of today's battle would be unpredictable. Whoa! In the distance, Zhenjuan Jinyuan, who was slashed by Qin Daoxuan's sword, stood up from the ruins of the palace and slowly lifted into the air, wearing a black spirit armor. The other 3 true monarchs of the Qingwei Dao faction also arrived, and the 4 of them stood in the air, and they were vaguely surrounding Qin Daoxian. Palace Master. After Zhenjuan Jinyuan took off, he did not look at Qin Daoxian again, but bowed slightly to the female cultivator of the late nascent soul not far away. Below. Qin Daoxuan's heart sank completely when he heard the palace lord's voice from Zhenjuan Jinyuan. In the Qingwei Taoist sect, there is only one female cultivator in the late nascent soul who can be called the Palace Master by Jin Yuanjin, the Palace Master of Yuyue Palace. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxuan's heart gradually sank. He realized that the trouble he encountered was much bigger than he expected. A top true monarch at the master level of the Qianyuan Sword Sect Hall, and 3 monks in the middle of the nascent soul. From the outside, Qin Daoxian was just a cultivator in the early stage of Jindan. The strength of the 2 sides is seriously unequal. Palace Master Yuyue was wearing a solemn and gorgeous Taoist robe. On the Taoist robe, there were lines of formations outlined. Just standing there, he exuded a compelling aura. The sect master really expected things like God, but I didn't expect that Qianyuan Jianzong would send you to attack the logistics fairy city of my Xianqing Dao League. The palace lord Yuyue said coldly, Qin Daoxian, this palace misses you with your talents. If you let me down the Xianqing Dao alliance, this palace can intercede for you and spare your life. How about it? Get around me. Qin Daoxian said with a smile, true monarch Ming Huang's bones are not yet cold. You're doing this too, isn't it too chilling for the disciples of the Qingwei Taoism? Hearing this sarcasm, Palace Master Yuyu's cold and pretty face was immediately covered with frost, and she said word by word, Qin Daoxian, since you want to court death, this palace will fulfill you. On the side, Zhenjuan Jinyuan heard this, and hurriedly said, Palace Master calm down, if there is a war in the city, I'm afraid. Hearing this, Palace Lord Yuyue glanced at Jinyuan Xiancheng, nodded to the 3 of them and said, you use the Taoist magic weapon to reinforce this airspace. Abide by the decree of the Palace Master. Among the 3, Jinyuan Zhenjuan belonged to the Xianyang sect, and the other 2 belonged to the Qingwei Taoist sect. But compared to the Palace Master of Yuyue Palace, the 3 of them are undoubtedly much lower in the Xianqing Dao League. At this moment, when Palace Master Yuyue speaks, they naturally dare not refuse to obey. Next moment. The 3 cultivators in the middle stage of nascent soul spread out. The 2 members of the Qingwei Dao faction took out 2 5th-order mid-grade Taoist instruments, and Jin Yuanjin took out a 5th-order high-grade Taoist instrument. Under the stimulation of mana, the 3-level Dao domain was immediately superimposed on this airspace, making the space here extremely stable. See this scene. Qin Daoxian stared at the Palace Master of Yuyue Palace intently, but he took out a small tower-shaped cave artifact in his hand and said, you 2 go in first. Seeing this, Jin Chanying didn't say a word, and directly got into the cave in the small tower. Xilan glanced at Qin Daoxian, opened her mouth slightly, and finally warned, be careful. After all, he followed Jin Chanying and entered the cave in the small tower. This time, in the huge Qiyan immortal mansion, except for Chen Daoxian, everyone fled. Chen Daoxian did not speak, and controlled the Fei Shui sword to frantically attack the palace master of Yuyue Palace. Feixuajin is only a low-rank 5th-rank sword, and he is not under a lot of pressure to control it. Unlike the shadow-bearing sword of the 5th-rank middle rank, it consumes a lot of mana. With the mana in Chen Daoxian's Dantian, and the mana stored in the White Lotus of the 4th-order high-grade good fortune. At this level of mana consumption, he can last for at least 3 or 4 hours, which can be regarded as a conventional attack method. It is a pity that this kind of conventional attack method is a fatal threat to Jindan Cultivator, but to the top true monarch, Palace Master Yuyue, it is like playing with a child, and there is no threat. Chen Daoxian, if you only have this means, you can die today. As soon as the voice of Palace Master Yuyue fell, a burst of hot breath erupted on her body. The law of fire in the high section of the law realm. Chen Daoxian recognized the law displayed by Palace Lord Yuyue at a glance. True monarch Ming Huang, as a late Yuanian cultivator, can still reach the high level of the law realm. As a top true monarch, it is the most basic to cultivate a law to the high level of the law realm. The reason why the top true monarchs are separated from ordinary late nascent soul monks is that they are not only the same as ordinary late nascent soul monks, who have cultivated a law to the high level of the law realm. In fact, any top true monarch has at least comprehended 2 or more laws. For example, the Palace Lord Yuyue in front of her, the law of fire in the high section of the law realm is only one of the laws she has realized, and she must have another law that she has yet to display. The biggest difference between top true monarchs and ordinary late nascent soul monks is the fusion of laws. Ordinary cultivators in the late nascent soul usually only cultivate a law to the high level of the law realm, and then cooperate with different levels of body training, which is the combat power of the common late nascent soul. And the top true monarch, not to mention the level of his qi refining and body refining cultivation, must be that one kind of law reaches the high level of the law realm, and the other law reaches at least the first stage of the law realm. In addition, the most important point is that the degree of fusion of these 2 laws should exceed 50%. Only when the fusion of the 2 laws exceeds 50% can the minimum standard of a top true monarch be reached. Not to mention the gap between ordinary late nascent soul monks and top true monarchs, both are top true monarchs, and the gap between them is huge. Just like Palace Lord Yuyue, who is average among the top true monarchs, only comprehends 2 kinds of laws, one reaches the high level of the law realm, and the other only has the first stage of the law realm. Even if the fusion of these 2 laws reaches 50%, it is not comparable to the top true monarchs who have both reached the high level of the law, and the fusion degree has reached 50%. In the same way, the 2 laws, the high level of the law and the early stage of the law, have a fusion degree of more than 50%, reaching 60%, and their strength is naturally stronger. Even, there are extremely perverted top true monarchs who not only comprehend 2 laws. It can be seen that there is a huge gap between the top true monarchs. This is only the gap in the realm of the pure Tao, but also the gap in the 2 basic cultivations of Qi refinement cultivation base and body refinement cultivation base, as well as the difference in magical tools, secret methods, and magical powers between different monks. These can have a huge impact on the strength of the monks. The Hall Master of Zhenhai Palace was able to become the top powerhouse in the Qianyuan sword sect with his mid-Yuaning cultivation base, relying more on the advantages in the realm of the Great Tao. Concubine Qinxue, the sect master of Qianyuan sword sect, can become the top-ranked powerhouse in the sect, relying more on the advantages of basic cultivation, secret techniques, and magical instruments. 7017K. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.